Okay, we're back. And I need to be down here. Yeah. All right, so I think we're going to just, I mean, weekends are wild cards. We've got plenty of time. I'm not doing anything with my day. I want to be productive, though. I think watching this will be productive for learning stuff from here and also give us like an activity to do. And it's also not too high effort. So this seems to be what we're doing. What are we at? We were going to be at like about 3 maybe.
Drive within us that we can't explain, and yet we have. So imagine for the majority of our evolutionary history what it was like. Every single day you woke up and you did not know if you were going to have a roof over your head. You didn't know if you were going to have food to eat. You had to go out and you had to hunt it. You had to go and find it every single day. The game reset. And so I would imagine that those lives were probably quite meaningful, at least in the sense that I don't think there will have been many existential crises on a day-to-day, because the purpose was quite clear. And like Pascal's Gambler, they had a task that they think will fulfill them when they get it, and they don't know whether it's going to be fulfilled. So what's happened today? Well, now we've been given the money without the game. We've got houses, we've got food, we can go next door and get some water, get some food from all over the planet, you know. Like that's it, that you've got the money without the game. So what do people do in the modern situation when they find that their life is a bit meaningless? They start intentionally doing things which are difficult. They start doing ice baths. They start exercising. They start going into a room just to physically exert themselves in order to sort of
Get the
build
ice
muscle and
baths
whatnot,
going.
like on purpose, for its own sake. Why? Because today we've got the money without the game. So people are going out and seeking the game without the money. They're going and doing the ice baths and the gym. Whereas the truly meaningful life is one in which you are playing the game in the service of getting the goal. That is why I think that, you know.
I think he's got the characterization on the ice baths a little off, but yeah, people are finding the game though. That's the point. People are finding the meaning and purpose out of doing these things. Ice baths are an interesting. Do we even have ice baths in part 2? We have to talk about ice baths as something that would be in. It's like down here where we talk about medication and PEDs. Yeah, where do we put out ice baths? Oh, yeah, because hormones and neuromodulators, we said that this probably should be like in a higher up fundamental section. Ice baths as a topic would come up in medication and PEDs. No, it would be like other types of therapy. I don't know. We'll have to put something here. Physical therapy here. No, it's something completely different. It's like sunlight. How do we get sunlight in the mix? I'll just put miscellaneous here. Sunlight, ice baths, etc. I mean, this is all like human stuff, but these are all things that do actually affect your mental health during the day. So worth talking about. We'll have to figure out how to do that appropriately, though. I totally realized that I just forgot to fill up my water, so I'm going to go back to intro here, and then we'll start up. All right, let's continue.
Literally just seeking out those things. I think that there's a reason why they have a psychological impact. It's not as simple as just like, oh, well, if you go to the gym, you know, it releases endorphins and makes you feel good. It's like, let's think a bit deeper than that. What's actually going on? People are seeking out the game without the money. Crucially, I've talked.
I mean, yeah, we have to think about that in the sense that people going to the gym, you're getting 2 in 1 here. You're getting the benefits of the exercise, but you're also then getting the benefits of working towards a goal. So you're getting those purpose type gains, which are largely, you know, I don't know, conscious. Largely, you're expecting progress and you're seeing it.
Talked about this as a death-denying pursuit, right? The idea that the things that you engage in here.
So I think he's worse equipped for this type of conversation than Dr. K is right now. Dr. K is going to tell you, okay, these are the things that you can apply and how they will actually affect your ability to go about finding meaning and purpose in your life.
Projects like religion and society are, even if just subconsciously, an exercise in the denial of death. What would that mean? It means that if you encounter other communities, if you encounter other traditions who just by their mere existence threatens the truth of your claims, those traditions subconsciously represent death. They represent nihilism. So what happens in a society that develops the kind of telecommunication technology whereby every single day you open your phone and you are addicted to a process of scrolling through every 7 seconds a new person with new ideas, different beliefs from all over the world? Do you think that might have something to do with the meaning crisis that we find ourselves in? We're told that what's happened is that people stopped believing in God and now they're all depressed, upset, and nihilistic. That's far too simple. You don't think it might have something to do with the fundamentally revolutionary change to our society that has been brought about specifically by telecommunication, by the ability to oftentimes unintentionally and non-consensually be confronted with traditions and people from halfway across the world that just remind you every single day, zing, 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 every single day, that your truth is not the only truth, that the transcendence that you've placed your trust in is completely subjective and personal, and that someone over there believes something totally different and seems to be living just the same kind of happy life. That, I think, is why people are struggling so much. Yeah. It's not just because they're atheists.
Yeah. So, yeah, one of the things that he brings up here, which is a good point, is that now it really matters the type of truth that you set up for yourself, the type of orientation of beliefs that you use to make sense of the world in such a way where when you do see varying beliefs, you don't feel this negative emotion, or you don't feel like it has anything to do with, or it conflicts in any way with yours. And yeah, that's kind of one of the things that we could provide here.
I have a lot to say about this. I'll try to keep it compact. By the way, we're aware of all kinds of different options for us spiritually.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily suggest that none of the options are actually accurate.
I agree.
That are. Okay, so
I'm making
there seems to be an implication there, and this is what creates kind of the angst, because all we have is our own personal subjective point of view.
I think that's why people experience that. Now, of course, as a matter of truth, you could say, for example, yourself, you could say, yes, I'm constantly confronted by different religious traditions, but I believe that Christianity is true. I think it has the best evidence and whatnot.
This is even true even in the scientific realm. You're
exactly.
all kinds of different ideas, but no one wants to say, just because there are so many different ideas to explain things, that nobody can be correct.
Which is why what I'm saying is insensitive to the truth or falsity of any of the traditions. What I'm saying is...
Okay, that's good, because I want to go to that next.
As an explanation as for the psychological phenomenon, right. the literal feeling that people have. Because likewise, you would say that there is a meaning crisis, maybe. You would say that lots of people, the statistics we just heard, you would say lots of people, don't feel meaning in their life. And you'd want to offer an explanation for why that's the case. You think their lives are meaningful, right? You think that all of those people who say, my life has no meaning, they're wrong. Their lives actually do have meaning.
Is that what you think?
Well, this was the subjective response. They feel like they don't have meaning, but they were made for a purpose. If they're not in touch with that meaning and purpose, then they're going to feel bereft and adrift.
So you believe there really is a purpose for their life, that's subjective.
So the tricky thing with the way that the Christian guy is talking about this is, he's purporting that there is some purpose that each person does have, in some transcendent way. But the difficulty is making that abstract purpose clearly something that will, lead them to the, a positive, emotionally feeling life. So for him, the faith is that it's something like having a relationship with God. Now, he has a subjective, personal understanding of what that relationship with God is like. But obviously, that's different for each person. So, the general premise is that, like, if you get to a point where you feel like you have a relationship with God, then you will also have this feeling of meaning and emotionally rewarding purpose, etc. Which that's a fair argument, and that it's probably true in some sense. That said, like, we could be more clear about the type of things that people could do, like what a relationship with God might be like for each person, And how do we because now we're a relationship with God is one that also talks about morality. So we can also talk about morality in this discussion in a way in which if you were to follow the moral rules and responsibilities, then it would lead to positive emotion for you. Like this is the stuff that we're gonna have to figure out in part 3.
Effectively, they haven't either found it or they don't feel
Correct,
it.
yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm offering a psychological explanation
Exactly.
for why they don't feel it, which is completely insensitive to whether or not there's a truth.
So far, I don't think Alex has given like the scientifically grounded psychological explanation. I think so far Dr. K has been the closest to doing that. But in order to give a psychological explanation, I mean, granted, you could give it via evolution, like you could give that framing, and that's what Alex did give, which is paramount. But yeah, you do have to start going into topics such as the brain and neuromodulators like dopamine and serotonin and stuff like that. Like you have to start going down into the biological level.
I'm so glad you put it that way, because this is exactly my point. I don't want anybody to miss it. We're really offering two different pictures of reality here, okay? People have to ask themselves two questions, I think. One is they reflect on their own personal awareness of the need for meaning and significance. Does it seem to them that this is just a psychological thing that people can satisfy in all kinds of different ways depending on the individual? Or does it seem to them, I'm asking these questions because I suspect there is a truth about life that might be discovered, okay? That's the first question. And I think most people's awareness of this is that there's something transcendent, something bigger than them, okay? And any kind of naturalistic explanation is not going to ultimately satisfy that. The other thing is there any reason to believe?
So hopefully Dr. Cake jumps in here and pushes back on this, because just because people think or feel that there ought to be some transcendent thing, like we can point out that a lot of that feeling is afforded by our culture, which has always had that type of thought. And we can point out that the science of the past 50 to 100 years really shows us how we can effectively figure out what people can do to lead to a emotionally rewarding life. And that would be the claim. So it's not necessary to have that extra component of that faith.
Believe that there is a transcendent reality, that God exists, that souls exist, that there is an objective morality that guides our life, and if we're living virtuously, that's going to be satisfying even if we don't believe in God or not. Those are the two things at stake here, And now this description, the story of reality I just described that I hold to, it seems to me completely coherent. Maybe not true, but it certainly is coherent that if there is a God who made us for himself and places eternity in our hearts, that we're going to yearn for that and made the way for us to live, and they're going to find good ways to live as opposed to unsatisfying ways to live.
An important thing to bring up is just because things sound coherent or they sound reasonable or they sound rational does not mean that they are ultimately right or actually leads to the positive outcome that you think they do. The feeling of rationality is one that is psychological. It's cognitive. It's affective. It involves our brain releasing molecules that make us feel certain emotions when we think about the phrase. We literally just talked about that, or I literally just talked about that in the next video that we're going to be putting out. But if anyone's here and actually interested, I do want to read this one little bit. Damasio, where are you at? Yeah, neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's work further explains how the brain uses these felt states to guide our choices. When faced with a course of action, our brain rapidly simulates the potential outcomes and generates an associated visceral bodily feeling for each one. A positive feeling of ease or confidence pushes us towards a decision. A negative feeling of unease or alarm pushes us away. This is the neurobiological basis for our gut instincts, revealing how our most rational decisions are profoundly shaped by the body's wisdom in predicting future states of well-being. So this is just to point out, like when you have that feeling of like this is a coherent belief system, that's afforded to you by your neurobiology and your entire biology, right? This is This is a discussion of like a, what's the way to say this? This is a discussion of, you know, how your brain is literally interfacing with the other systems in your body, such that when you feel a certain way, you're not only feeling like some like, you know, explicit meaning of, words that sound like a rational sentence and whatnot, but you're also feeling like you're feeling your muscles and your heart rate. You know, there's a lot of internals that you're feeling, your gut. And that all comes together into this feeling of meaning that you have. Okay. Probably shouldn't go into these tangents just for the sake of it. Unless someone brings something up, then I will. But it's probably worth just that we continue. So
That makes sense.
It doesn't
make
take
any
forever
sense
to
to me
watch
at
this.
all to say that my molecules are moving in a certain way to create in my conscious mind, which Darwinism cannot offer an explanation for. It hasn't. That's why Daniel Dennett said consciousness is an illusion, you know, because he couldn't do anything with it.
Hold on. What's going on here?
Molecules are moving in a certain way, eternity in our hearts, that we're going to yearn for that, and made the way for us to live, and they were going to find good ways to live as opposed to unsatisfying ways to live. That makes sense. Doesn't make any sense to me at all to say that my molecules are moving in a certain way to create in my conscious mind, which Darwinism cannot offer an explanation for. It hasn't. That's why Daniel Dennett.
Yes. So this is where I think he might be just slightly outdated, or he just doesn't understand the rest of the literature. But we can do that. It is it's rather easy to do that.
Said consciousness is an illusion, you know, because he couldn't do anything with it. Thomas Nagel wrote his book, Mind and the Cosmos. You're familiar with this, I'm sure. You know, why the neo-Darwinian materialistic view of the world is almost certainly false. And he's an atheist, for goodness sake, because he can't explain consciousness, not in a Darwinian way. So how is it that this mystery of consciousness, which contains propositional thoughts, ideas, and purposes, if consciousness can't be explained in a Darwinian way, how can some characterization of molecules in motion accomplish that same end?
Yeah, if
That's
I'm
my
not
concern.
mistaken, that Antonio Damasio is now writing books specifically about that, like specifically answering those questions. What are we looking for? Feeling and knowing, making minds conscious, and he could we get like a good synopsis? A succinct, illuminating, and wholly engaging investigation of how biology, neuroscience, psychology, and artificial intelligence have given us the tools to unlock the mysteries of human consciousness. Here we go. In recent decades, many philosophers and cognitive scientists have declared the problem of consciousness unsolvable, but Antonio Damasio is convinced that recent findings across multiple scientific disciplines have given us a way to understand consciousness and its significance for human life. So I would need him to say specifically why Antonio Damasio is wrong in order for me to feel like, he's got something that, you know, is pushing the boundaries here. But I don't think
This is
he's
why I'm not
aware.
convinced at all about the naturalist one.
Yeah.
And this one seems so much more plausible.
What you're raising is the problem of consciousness, which is, I think, a new question, but an important one. I wanted to point out earlier that when I gave an explanation as to why people feel a lack of meaning, and you said that has no bearing on truth, I think that's...
You admitted that too at the end there. I appreciate that.
I don't admit it, I assert it. Of course that's the case.
You affirmed you weren't making the case.
In the same way that if somebody says that, like, if you're a Christian and you say the reason everyone's so depressed is because society has become atheistic, somebody could say, well, yeah, I mean, that might be the case, but that doesn't mean atheism is false. It might be that it is true and just depressing.
Right.
Right? Of course, like the question, if we're discussing,
There are alternate explanations.
if you want
of
to know
reality.
why somebody feels a particular way psychologically, you can offer an explanation which has absolutely nothing to do with the truth or falsity of a worldview. You can then separately discuss the truth or falsity of a worldview, which you've then gone on to do with specific reference to the problem of
You really
consciousness.
thinks it has absolutely nothing, or it can be experienced apart from the issue of worldview.
I'm saying that if you're literally just trying, I mean, if the question I'm asked is why do people perceive a lack of meaning in their life, that's just a question about their psychological constitution. That's
Right.
literally a question about why they feel a particular way.
So if a person was a total nihilist,
Yeah.
didn't believe in anything, was important, and then they were depressed and even suicidal, would you say there wasn't a link between that worldview and their feelings?
Yes, there is, but what I'm saying is that the link between that worldview and their feeling has nothing to do with the truth of the worldview.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like, it
Oh,
doesn't.
yeah, I follow
Nihilism
that.
can be true. Nihilism can be false.
Right.
Nihilism can be an unintelligible concept. It can still be the case that that person's conviction is making them depressed.
Agreed.
Right? In the same way that somebody could.
We would say that nihilism being true is an unintelligible type of assertion to make.
be a Christian and that makes them really happy. That doesn't mean Christianity is true. Someone can become a Christian and become really depressed. That doesn't mean that Christianity is false. What I'm trying to point out, it is just trivially true.
So I still want to try to understand a little bit about what you're saying.
Okay.
Because I don't fully follow. Fine. And I think that the reason I feel way more confident in what you're saying is because
Christ is pulling at your
100%. Yeah. So I think Christ. We both talk to Christ, so like we're good on that. Like I know where he's coming from. So a couple of things that I'm
I talk to Christ too, you know.
awesome. Does he talk back?
He does not talk back.
Yeah, that's tricky. We can talk about how to get you there.
One person said just read the Gospels aloud.
So
I've
couple
done
of
that a
things.
few times.
So a couple of things that I'm curious about.
Yes.
One is, so I'm noticing that I'm trying to understand where. So I love the way you're sallying forth to grapple with this problem of purpose. You do a beautiful job of sort of talking about like, okay, what's the truth? And then there's this psychological perspective. And I want to just try to understand this. So are you of the mind that from a psychological perspective, you can wake up one day and feel like you have purpose, but that doesn't necessarily talk about purpose transcendentally?
Capital P.
I'm saying that doesn't talk about the truth of your belief.
Okay.
So, for example, you could believe that your children are about to die, and that suddenly your life feels really meaningless and really purposeless. It could be completely false. You could have been
Right.
like misled. Someone could
So-
lie to you. But like what I'm saying is the psychological explanation for why you feel a particular way has nothing to do with the truth of the thing that you believe that's making you feel that way.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I'm curious about is when you are exploring purpose, are you exploring it from, are you trying to find the answer at the top? Like what is the truth of purpose? Or are you focused on the subjective experience of purpose?
Depends on the context. If you're asking, I mean, we were talking literally about a psychological explanation for why people feel a particular way. You know, is
Okay.
it due to a decline in religion, that kind of stuff? In that case, it's subjective. It's individuals. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that the top one can be answered?
What the top one is in like there being.
There being purpose, right? So that's not subjective at all.
So what does that mean? There being purpose? Because for me, that looks like some kind of reason to act or to be that is not contingent on some other fact. Just to be clear, to make it clear for the listener, I think you hear what I'm saying. But like, suppose you woke up and you were a Christian and that brought you meaning. What I'm saying is that subjective sense of meaning that you get from Christianity has no bearing on the truth or falsity of Christianity.
Gotcha.
Right?
Right. So what I'm curious about is, in your opinion, and if you don't have one, that's totally fine. Do you think that? So sure, there's a subjective experience which doesn't speak to truth, right? It's just a subjective experience. Do you think that there is some way to grapple with that truth?
What, the truth of Christianity or something?
The truth of purpose. Or
Right,
like,
but we're shifting here, right? Because
Okay.
what I'm saying is,
let me shift. I don't want to do that. So then I'm going to go back.
this is why maybe I'm not understanding your question.
No.
All I'm saying
Yeah.
is that if you feel a subjective sense of purpose from proposition P, like the fact that you feel purpose from that does not have any
Bearing on whether
the truth
proposition
of P.
P
And then
is
you just
true.
ask, but is there a way to discuss whether P is true? Well, yeah, like so if proposition P is Christianity, then yeah, we can talk about the historical argument for the resurrection of Jesus or something.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm not trying to reach into some
Yeah.
mystical capital P purpose realm.
Gotcha. So right. So I think that's so helpful. Thank you so much. Okay. So that's really helpful for me because then I want to go back to something you said earlier about cell phones and we're scrolling on cell phones and
Yeah.
things like that, and we have this like this worldview, and then if we encounter a worldview that is different from ours, that could put us into some form of crisis or difficulty, and we're getting bombarded by all of these things. And so what that means is that the individual, when they wake up in the morning and they scroll through their phone, right? We're not talking about whether the proposition P is true or not. Their subjective experience is like, I have no meaning and I have no purpose in life, right? And so you posited one mechanism, which I think is a completely valid mechanism, is a philosophical mechanism, but we have a lot of neuroscience mechanisms that support what you're saying. So, and this is where I think that I'm going to sort of restate that what my experience of this stuff has been, because I'm not a philosopher, is I don't really know too well how to contend with whether proposition P is true or not. That's why I was asking. And it's not that you weren't being clear, it's that I'm just ignorant of how philosophy works. And so that's why I was kind of asking, like, can you do that? So that's where also where like I'm kind of coming from is that we have this crisis that has high suicidality, high addiction rates. People left the church in big ways, and then we're sort of left with like, okay, how do we navigate this? And that's where I think if we look at a lot of the influences on society, we see that there's profound neurological influences. And what I sort of found is when I was working, especially with like patients with trauma, that there is a set of things that is happening in the world around them that induce certain changes to how they experience the world. So a really good example of this is if you want to find your purpose in life, you should reduce your level of alexithymia. So alexithymia is the inability to tell what you are emotionally feeling. And if we look at the influence of things like cell phones, what they're doing is they're suppressing the parts of our brain that experience negative emotions. Sometimes they provoke negative emotions, sometimes they suppress negative emotions. And so if you start to be able to feel more, right? So this is literally shutting.
All right, we got to write this stuff down. especially since I don't even know if I recognize this word that he just said. Alexithymia?
And if we look at the influence of things like self-hyping that induce certain changes to their how they experience the world.
Okay.
So a really good example of this is if you want to find your purpose in life, you should reduce your level of alexithymia.
All right, here we go. If you want to reduce the
of ideas that works on the genetic level in evolution. I can't quite explain why, but I just such of ideas be nothing to do with the truth of evolution of
Oh, is
ideas
this a
that
joke?
works on the genetic level in evolution.
Oh,
We call it
no.
memetics when it's ideas rather than genes. The society which just ends up developing this idea that actually,
that evidential that all
Full of like, if you ask what is the mechanism, posited one mechanism,
as you woke up and you were a Christian, and
and what you're saying is because
Christ is their being purpose. Because for me, we can talk about the historical argument for the resurrection.
their thinking of this stuff has left profound neurological influences in the So alexithymia says if you want to find your purpose in life, you should reduce your level of alexithymia.
Oh my gosh, I was totally wrong. If you want to find level of purpose in your life, this is not it. You should reduce your alexithymia. That's my guess. Oh, I'm just misclicking all day. Psychological trait characterized by difficulties in identifying, understanding, and expressing emotions. Okay, so this is definitely a thing we want to do. Nope, that's it. Dr. K.
So around them that induce certain changes to their how they experience the world. So a really good example of this is if you want to find your purpose in life, you should
Oh my
reduce
gosh.
your level of alexithymia. So alexithymia is the inability to tell what you are emotionally feeling. And if we look at the influence of things like cell phones, what they're doing is they're suppressing the parts of our brain that experience negative emotions. Sometimes they provoke negative emotions, sometimes they suppress negative
This is a
emotions.
great way of going about this whole conversation. You know, we know something that actually affects people's, like empirically affects people's feeling of meaning. And we're going to now leverage that to derive prescriptions about what they can or ought to do if they want to get that feeling of meaning.
And so if you start to be able to feel more, right? So this is literally shutting down the parts of our brain that give us an internal sense of what we feel. And so as you shut down your ability to detect what you are feeling on the inside, that correlates with your not having a detection of purpose on the inside. So I think that this is you asked the question, why is this happening? I think we're disabling, and I was working with people with trauma and sort of figured out a sequence of things that is based on the literature that involves things like reducing your alexithymia. Another big part is managing your ego. So I think this relationship with
All right, another part is managing your ego. I don't know what that correlates to in the science, but
God thing is a really, really, really great example of like, if you ask what is the mechanism of a relationship with God? So we as human beings tend to be like, I'm here. But then as you relate to other people around you, your sense of identity changes. And when you relate to something that is transcendent, I know that that's a scary word and I don't know exactly what that word means, but as you relate to something that is really big up here, that has noticeable effects on your default mode network, your sense of self. And
okay, there we go. ... When you relate to something transcendent, that has profound effects.
as your peer, that has noticeable effects on your
Noticeable.
default mode network, your sense of self. And as your default mode network no longer becomes hyperactive, the more hyperactive your default mode network is, the more likely I think you are to be like nihilistic, to have a pessimistic worldview. As we start to make those changes, then people start to feel a sense of purpose. They start to feel a sense of connection. And then the last kind of really interesting data which we can go into is psychedelics, which is really, really fascinating because this allows us to test subjective experience and the effect of subjective experience on a person.
Is this an opportunity?
Please.
I'm just concerned that you might have overstated something, maybe reflecting back something you thought I was saying, and I was
What is going on here? Dr. K is spitting straight bars, and then this guy and Alex just want to talk. They just want to have their own beef. No one is anyone going to acknowledge what Dr. K just said?
Making the case about the genetic fallacy, and just because a person has a motivation to believe something doesn't necessarily mean that the thing is true or have a subjective experience. I think it goes a little further than that, though. If you went to the doctor and you weren't feeling well and the doctor gave you a pill, and then you went home and you took the pill, then you felt better, I think it would be appropriate for you to say, well, that pill, taking that pill, going to that doctor, had something to do with my experience that I'm having right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is why I think it might have unintentionally been an overstatement on your part, because I think
One thing I should just say is really the stuff that Dr. K is talking about poses a much bigger threat to this guy's belief system than Alex's belief system. I know like Dr. K was talking to Alex in that whole thing, and it almost kind of seemed like it was like a contention between them. But what Dr. K is saying renders what he believes to actually be true in a like transcendent sense to be not necessarily true. Like what would it actually be? He's pointing out that it really just matters what the person feels. Like if a person feels like there's some transcendent God, then it will have that effect on them. It doesn't matter if that God's actually real. So that's kind of what, but the issue is, you know, the very implication, like it's paradoxical, the very implication that the God might not actually be real might actually affect the person's ability to believe that there is a transcendent God, and that, you know, so it's a like a difficult sustaining self-identity to have here.
I think just like your friend, Stephen, who in Dubai all of a sudden became a Christian, everything changed, okay? Well, I guess you could say the change of life isn't maybe knock down, drag down proof that what he believes now is actually true, big P, big T.
That like Jesus rose from the dead.
It seems to be, pardon me?
That like Jesus rose from the dead. It's got no bearing on whether that's true or not.
Well, I'm speaking of a different thing right now. I'm thinking about the experience now with God that he's having. If he's having this changed life, this is evidential. This lends credibility to the belief system that he's now adopted because it created this particular significant change in his life. It may not be proof, and that word is really an oosey-goosey word, just how to pin down. But nevertheless, it still seems to be evidential.
Yo, Darmadon, what's good?
It speaks to the legitimacy and accuracy and truthfulness.
Well, I was just watching through this thing. Yeah, I was getting worked up. Hey, VIP, yeah. So apparently we just got that. I don't know how. I think it was 50 followers allowed us to have VIPs. So yeah, I gave it to you and Onion Helmet. I don't think anyone else shows up as regular. So yeah, hopefully that actually helps in the whole link posting thing. I'm not sure because yeah, I think our filter is through one of the other services, probably Stream Elements rather than Twitch proper. So I'm not sure. Maybe it won't work. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I'm getting worked up because Dr. K just dropped. Like Dr. K is spitting facts over here, and then this guy immediately just went straight back to Alex, and he wants to debate Christianity. So we'll see. We'll see if this thing gets back on track. But as long as they don't talk about the stuff that Dr. K is trying to bring up, they won't be able to answer this question of meaning. Like Dr. K is hitting the mark at the most like fundamental level here. Seems Alex is in kill mode as well. Like Alex, I think the fact that this guy's here is really bothering Alex, and it is something to be said that what I just said before you came in here is that the stuff that Dr. K is talking about, I think renders this guy's belief system more, or it poses more of a threat for this guy's belief system than Alex's. And so Alex is in probably a position where he has to make it clear that, hey, like, yeah, if we're gonna go in the route, that Dr. K wants to go in, like, if we're gonna start pointing out that it really only matters if a person believes that there's a God for them to get that experience of positive emotion, then we have to point out that it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole religion's like true in a transcendent sense. It's only true in the sense that having that type of identity leads to the positive outcome. I guess the Christian represents a lot of people, right? That contribute to all these convos. Yep. Yeah. So perhaps he feels like he has a responsibility to make sure that's clear. But yeah, I feel like some of the philosophy speak has slowed down this conversation, whereas Dr. K has really clarified things. But yeah, we'll see.
Of the belief system that produced this changed life. That's what I'm saying.
It's only evidence that belief in that thing makes someone feel more fulfilled. That's the only thing it's evidence of.
Okay, so this is where we differ. Just like,
I'm with him on this one.
okay, just because.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. This is going in the direction that hopefully that it leads to something positive.
Just because you're saying just because they believe it, this makes them better. It doesn't mean that the belief is actually sound.
Greg, I've got a good way of
Right.
coming at this then. So
This is where we differ.
That's right.
if I had 5 friends and they all picked 5 different religions and they all felt the same thing that my friend did in Dubai where they all felt better for it, is that evidential that all 5 religions are true?
Well, see, I don't actually think it works that way. You can speculate and say and offer that illustration, but I don't think it actually works that way. I think that universally the experience of
But what Stephen just said, I thought was pretty excellent in terms of a thought experiment. Classic elephant parable. What was the elephant parable? Or was that pretty similar in I guess the spirit of that thought experiment? You know, people with blindfold touching an elephant. No, I don't know. That's how I think about religions anyway. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that that phrase or that I should just Google elephant parable. Blind man and an elephant. The parable of the blind man and an elephant is a story of a group of blind men who have never come across an elephant before and who learn and imagine what the elephant is like by just touching it. Each blind man feels a different part of the animal's body, but only one part, such as the side of the tusk. Then they describe the animal based on their limited experience. In some versions, they come to suspect that the other person is dishonest, and they come to blows. The moral of the parable is that humans have a tendency to claim absolute truth based on their limited subjective experience, as they ignore other people's limited subjective experiences, which may be equally true. Yeah, that's why empirical science is a story of aggregation. So this one's kind of. I mean, yeah, you can. I do see how you can put it in that direction, because this guy, someone who is born into a different religion can feel that same way. So I'm gonna just rewind just to make sure I get his argument, but he needs to give a good argument right now for why that it wouldn't be the case, why his subjective understanding of God is the understanding of God. There's good pictures to fit. We gotta check out the images here. Oh yeah, look at this. It's a wall. It's a snake. It's a spear. It's a rope. Nice. What was the source? This is probably a ChatGPT question.
Evidential that all 5 religions are true.
Well, see, I don't actually think it works that way. You can speculate and say and offer that illustration, but I don't think it actually works that way. I think that universally the experience of Christians is very, very quantifiable
So in
terms
that
of
scenario,
transformed lives, and this is one of the reasons that these transformed lives lend credibility to the belief system itself.
so in that scenario,
Okay, I think this guy just did not understand the question at all. The idea is that you could take all 5 of these people and quantifiably see the effect on that the religion has on their lives, and see that it has a positive effect on all their lives. So now we abstract and we say, okay, so it seems like religion is something that is beneficial to your experience of meaning and your the purpose. I don't know where it came from. Oh, okay. Probably like a long time ago, honestly.
where one of my friends turns to Islam, one of my friends turns to Christianity, etc., etc., The only
But I think if you sit in someone's ideas, you can find a lot of truth in it, especially the religions. And then the elephant parable explains how they can all have parts of the truth. Yeah. I agree. I think that's probably one of the things that contributed to later philosophers having a better understanding of things, and having a speculative conceptualization of the world that is slightly more clear, because they have all these avenues of reading different stories and history, that they just have a better understanding of other people's experience of the world. So then they were able to more comprehensively incorporate intuition, or people's intuitions, into their philosophies. Granted, once again, empirical science really just blows all of this speculation out of the water. And so this guy's got to grapple with that. I don't know. Hopefully Stephen points out that he just gave a terrible argument here.
my friends turns to Islam, one of my friends turns to Christianity, etc., etc. The only experience that's evidential of truth is the Christians.
Well, I think you have to look at every individual thing, all right? And here's my suspicion, and I haven't quantified this across the board, all right? Different people have different experiences by engaging different religious belief traditions, whatever. But insofar as anybody's life is significantly altered by that thing, this to me is evidence that something is going on here than merely the belief. If it's just the belief, you're back to Marx again and the opiate of the people. You know, that would be Karl, not Groucho, although it's not clear that anybody knows who those two people are anymore.
It sounds as though, you know, if I lied to somebody on a cruel prank and I told them that.
All right, before we get on to whatever philosophical play Alex has, I don't think the guy answered the question properly or like effectively. It still stands. If each person in those different religions experiences a meaningful life, then either you have to point out that each one is evidence of the truth of the religion, or you have to point out that maybe something else is at play. Many Christian apologists claim that they have investigated other religions thoroughly, but then get basic things wrong about Hinduism and Buddhism. Some will learn about a religion only from people that want to defeat it. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's really tough to, like, if you're really deep into a religious view, it's really tough to like go into another religion and try to actually like understand it in the way that people who are most adamant about that religion understand it. Like it's tough in the sense that it will be unpleasant. It will cause, I mean, one, it's just tough because there's a lot of information. Like there's so much stuff to know about each of these religions. There's so much lore, and and you're always going to be forced to think about it in relation to your own belief systems. But yeah, there's a lot of nuance, a lot of depth, and a lot of this stuff is acted out. Like it's not just in the books. Like I think a lot of people's religion or their religious feelings and stuff like that come from people in their lives. Like it comes from positive role models from when they were a kid, just how they see community when they go to their practice, whatever it is, if it's mass for Christian or whatnot. Like people like pick up this stuff. Like these things have to be experienced to get the full the full essence of what's going on, and to look at some other religion's prayer ceremonies and be like, oh, that's weird, and then to not like actually trying to consider like what that might feel like to actually be in it, to be, and not only just like to be there, but to be accepted and to be understood as part of the practice itself. It probably is a profound feeling. It probably feels pretty good. So yeah, it is just very difficult to do this, but still, I don't know if we have like good. Do we have good data on which types of religions or which types of ceremonies or types of practice do benefit people? And on one hand, yeah, like we do know things like meditation, which is obviously taken from different practices and religions, or it's like not taken from, but like it's within different practices and religions. We know that has positive effects. We know that social relationships have effects, and some aspects of different religions involve feelings of community and social. So like we could abstract out the things that are actually at play here, and then we can consider what you can do about that. And we're going to have to consider, hey, can you actually utilize those things without believing in the religion itself? Like, can you find other ways to check off these boxes, let's just say? Whether it is your own spiritual meditative practice while you're also going out and having positive relationships with other people and community, while you're also having a relationship with your own conscience, and not a conscience that you believe to be external, but a conscience that you believe to be afforded to you by your own genetics and the brain. I was listening to a random Christian on Joe Rogan, and he wasn't an intellectual, but described from an early age having deep dispassion because of the Bible. Interesting. Wow. Having deep dispassion. That's like that's like negative, right? What does actually dispassion mean? Dispassion is a state of quality of being unemotional, detached, and objective, characterized by an absence of strong emotions like passion, anger, or fervor. Lack of bias, calm detachment, and objectivity. Oh, so was he using dispassion as a positive trait as opposed to something that was putting him into a hole of some kind? But I could see that being a valid perspective. You read something like that and it shows, the way that the world is and how you are, merely someone who can exist within that world that's already been created. And, myself and I think most religions value dispassion, but can come across negative. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I guess what we pointed out in this document is that development at an early age is really pivotal on the way that you believe or on your belief systems for the rest of your life. Like, you build some strong connections that are more difficult to go away, to get rid of. If you build these connections that point out these facts about the world, then now you can see this as objective, and the world is quite clear, and it doesn't have to be, full of anxiety or uncertainty or negative emotion, etc. It can just simply be the way the world is, and you can operate within that, and it can give you a lot of positive emotions. But yeah.
Say they're really struggling with money. They're really, really suffering for it, and they have these psychological effects of feeling that life is meaningless. They want to kill themselves, whatever it is. They just cannot keep living. And I tell them, good news, you've won the lottery. You've won £1 million. And suddenly, the weight is lifted. The joy is brought. Of course, money isn't sufficient for bringing about meaning in life. This person, but I'd lie to them. Like, the fact that they feel this immense sense of meaning from a belief that they've adopted bears absolutely no evidence
in that case,
on whether
you're
it's
right.
true that they've won £1 million.
I'm just saying that to divorce all results from belief systems is a mistake.
I don't want to
think
do that.
There can be a connection there.
Could be
Just
something
because you
about-
can mislead somebody by telling them a lie and they can experience something emotionally doesn't mean that the other person who's experiencing something transcendent in their emotions. And by the way, for Christians, it's not just a high, because Christianity is not a continuous high. Even people who are suffering terribly as Christians in persecution, read Fox's Book of Martyrs, still have this strong sense of value, purpose, and security. Even so, I'm just saying there's an evidential relationship between those. It's not enough to just simply dismiss it because you can tell a lie and someone could have the same kind of feeling.
I'm even happy to say that, like, I don't know if this is true, but suppose it were just the case that only Christianity brought about this positive effect. Suppose we just discovered that everybody who claimed.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, find people that genuinely have these feelings that aren't Christians, and what can you make of their life? So you find an atheist, and they do feel like they have purpose and whatnot. Throw me in the mix. I would say I'm agnostic, but throw me in the mix. I'll say I've got purpose. It's working on this document. It's doing what I'm doing right now, and yeah, what do you make of that? You know, does that show anything for or against Christianity? What's going on there? I don't know. Just normally you hear about Christians and love, forgiveness, morality, but they are also into dispassion, and that just hit me like, whoa! As a kid, he grasped this deep thing. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm curious exactly like what he meant by that, and what was the implication for him in his life? Like, what did that lead him to think differently, or yeah, because that is a cool perspective.
Claimed to feel meaning, it just didn't compare.
That's not what I'm saying.
But suppose that were the case. Even if there was something really special about Christianity that gave some evidential credence to something specific about Christianity, that's true about Christianity, that it particularly infuses life with meaning, I still think it just has nothing to do with the truth of Christianity as a worldview. I mean, Christianity hinges on the historical fact of the resurrection
That's
of Jesus,
absolutely
right?
correct.
And so the best way of explaining this is to say that if your friend from Dubai starts going to church and they start feeling really like meaning, like start experiencing a lot of meaning in their life, that has absolutely no evidential bearing on whether Jesus rose from the dead. And if Christianity as a proposition essentially is the resurrection of Jesus, and this feeling that your friend had has no evidential bearing on the resurrection of Jesus, then the feeling that your friend had no evidential bearing on
Well,
Christianity.
it turns out that Christianity has
So unfortunately, this is the conversation Alex wants to have, and this guy will gladly have this conversation. But it's not the conversation that they came here to have. Like, it's not like this thing's opened up is like, how can we actually, help people out, help this population out, this generation. Now, granted, perhaps this guy feels like this is a necessary conversation to have in order to get to that other one, because the answer to that other question is literally just be Christian, like just be religious. I feel like Alex maybe doesn't have perhaps he would go in the direction of Dr. K in terms of actually solving the problem. So if this guy wasn't here, I'm curious where he would want to bring this conversation. Dr. K, I think, is equipped to just bring this conversation right to the finish line, but we're not able to get there until these guys figure out, come to some agreement or not agreement, if they never do. But yeah, so far this conversation's been held hostage by this squabble.
has multiple factors of support and evidence. Crucial, obviously, the crux, one might say, is the resurrection of Christ, death and resurrection, because of the theological significance of that is in the whole system, all right? But there are lots of other things, too, that have bearing. And actually, I think there are people who have become Christians without having a robust understanding even of the resurrection of that. So even though theologically that is the crux, I agree.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that for subjectively every person who enters in a relationship with Christ has all of that in place immediately.
I'm really interested to understand. For my friend in Dubai,
But what he just said is pretty tricky, because now if you could feel the gains of Christianity, but you don't have to really understand the true crux of Christianity, then what does that say about that true crux? Like, his previous argument was something akin to, because people feel this thing as they understand this thing, then therefore that thing that they understand might have some credence. Now you've got a separate argument here that there's just this transcendence regardless of whether other people even understand it or even know about it. They might not be even cognizant of the true the true tenets of Christianity. So he's like, there's something so narcissistic, like in a technical term or in a technical way, about his belief of what is true because of his subjective anecdotal beliefs and experience.
if he came to you and he was your friend in Dubai, and he said, my life is lacking meaning, I can't get out of bed anymore, what would you prescribe him? What would you recommend? What would you suggest?
Okay. So this question is great because now we're getting, hopefully it puts, I couldn't tell you what Alex would say if the Christian wasn't here, but this is the question that would answer that. It's like, okay, what would you say to the person? Where would you bring this?
As he's your friend.
It's hard to know without knowing that friend, but if it seemed to me like going to church or reading the Gospels might provide that for him, then I'd probably recommend that he did that. But I think that literally the subjective feeling of meaning is usually tied up in the identification of something that transcends your individual self. Right?
Why would you?
And I think whatever is the most plausible course of action for that person to engage in something like that would be what I would recommend for them. if they're maybe they're not particularly interested in religion, I'd recommend that they read some philosophy of mind and try to understand the nature of consciousness. And they might start. I might recommend, depending on who they are, that they take a psychedelic drug and try to experience something which cannot be put into words. Because a lot of the time, when you experience something like an ego death, and you might realize that the individuated self is an illusion, and that these cliches that keep cropping up when someone does psychedelics. And I actually think that the problem of consciousness is absolutely crucial to this. I think the most plausible account of consciousness implies that consciousness is something which is sort of received by the biological organism rather than produced by it. Because I agree with you that you can't just put a bunch of molecules together and get consciousness. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's interesting that some of our best scientific evidence is
What do you mean that doesn't make any sense whatsoever? Just because I've said this before, just because we don't actually have enough of an understanding of our of the complexity of our brain and body and how that literally leads to the subjective experience of consciousness, we do currently have a very comprehensive view of how consciousness can come about. I mean, perhaps this is new science. Like, I'm reading this book that came out in 2017 that literally talks about this. That's maybe, it's the past 10 years. I know that's pretty recent, but these are Alex O'Connor just got to get on that. And then also it makes it plausible, at least. Like it's plausible at least that science can point out that type of relationship if we were to know more about the science. Like it's like if we were to better understand these connections, then we might be able to understand what's actually leading to consciousness. It's a claim that we don't have anything else going on except for the molecules and the matter, rather than a claim that I don't want to put a rather here, but yeah, I think I would push back on that.
Suggesting the fact not that the brain produces consciousness, but that the brain inhibits and focuses and organizes consciousness. It does not produce it.
Yeah, so
consciousness in any sense received by implies that I think the most plausible account of consciousness implies that consciousness is something which is sort of received by the biological organism rather than produced by it. Because I agree with you that you can't just put a bunch of molecules together and get consciousness. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's interesting that some of our best scientific evidence is suggesting the fact not that the brain produces consciousness, but that the brain inhibits and focuses and organizes consciousness. It does not produce it.
All right, here we go. I got to figure this out. This is really important. Who's saying this and why?
Yeah, so
consciousness, any sense received by the biological organism rather than produced by it. Because I agree with you that you can't just put a bunch of molecules together and get consciousness. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's interesting that some.
All right, Alex O'Connor. I just butchered that. I butchered it again. Said that.
Of our best scientific evidence is.
It's interesting that.
With you that you can't just put a bunch of molecules together and get consciousness. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's interesting that some of our best scientific evidence is suggesting the fact not that the brain produces consciousness, but that the brain inhibits and focuses and organizes consciousness. It does not produce it.
I'm going to need one more go through. Suggests that.
Sense whatsoever. But it's interesting that some of our best scientific evidence is suggesting the fact not that the brain produces consciousness, but that the brain inhibits and focuses and organizes consciousness. It does not produce it.
Yeah,
inhibits.
But that the brain inhibits and focuses. And organizes consciousness.
Organizes rather than creates consciousness. Who's saying this? What are the leading theories? And how do they contend with Antonio Damasio's rather grounded and material interpretation of consciousness, explainable by evolution, homeostasis, and biology. All right. This is really important. Tracing the origins, developing a response. Okay, the brain as a filter, unpacking a controversial view of consciousness. The assertion, echoed by figures like YouTuber Alex O'Connor, that some of our best scientific evidence suggests that the brain inhibits, focuses, organizes, rather than creates consciousness, delves into a fascinating and contentious area of consciousness studies. This perspective, often termed the filter or transmission theory, posits that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe, and the brain acts as a receiver or reducing valve, tuning into a broader conscious reality rather than generating it from scratch. This view is championed by a diverse group of thinkers, ranging from early psychologists to contemporary philosophers and scientists. Prominent proponents include William James, suggesting that the brain doesn't produce thoughts and feelings, but rather transmits them from a wider pre-existing consciousness. Huxley, oh my gosh, we're getting authors here, introduced the concept of mind at large, a universal consciousness that the brain and nervous system filter to provide a limited evolutionarily advantageous sliver of reality. He famously described the brain as a reducing valve. We got Myers here, a classicist and philosopher. Myers was a key figure in the Society for Psychical Research and an early proponent of the idea that consciousness is a larger phenomenon that the brain filters. And then we got Bergson, the French philosopher, argued that the brain's primary function is to limit our awareness, focusing it on action and survival. He saw the brain as an organ of attention to life, not the source of consciousness itself. All right, this is very interesting. And I should just be transparent about my understanding currently. We understand a lot about the brain and the body right now. We understand that the trajectory of evolution can be described through the lens of homeostasis, which is what Antonio Damasio points out, where our body is keeping some sort of regulation going, and all these systems are working to keep our body in a range that leads to survival and thriving. So when things go awry, your body's like signaling other parts of the body, other parts of the brain. This is a full embodied process where there's a lot of different processes going on, some of which are chemical, some of which are neural. So there's a little bit of electricity involved. So would you say is it literally just would we say electromagnetic? When people talk about this is actually something I'll just ask ChatGPT. When discussing neural communication, is it apt to say that it is partly electromagnetic, or are these just different ways of talking about the same thing? Electrical, like what's which is the appropriate usage? Electric meaning pertains to electricity itself. You can say neural communication is partly electric in the sense that neurons rely on electrical signals. Okay. I see. Electrical, this relating to or operated by electricity. Okay, so usage. This is the most natural. Okay, electrical and standard adjective when talking about neurons, both electrical and chemical processes. And electromagnetic, pertaining to the combined phenomenon of electricity and magnetism, includes electric and magnetic fields and electromagnetic waves. Usage, usually not appropriate when describing how neurons communicate. While electrical currents in neurons technically generate magnetic fields, those fields are byproducts, not part of the mechanisms. Okay, this is a different question, but wouldn't do the magnetic fields generated not have an effect on the homeostatic mechanisms of the brain? Wouldn't these effects, if they do, wouldn't these effects be part of the evolutionary development? Okay, let's unpack it. Yes, they generate it, but they're extremely weak. Every time an electrical current flows, it produces a magnetic field in neurons. These currents come from the movement of ions across membranes during action potentials and synaptic activity. Yo, Zeos 3, what's good? What kind of philosophy are you looking for? One where we just talk about we talk about the brain and science and stuff. I'm on like a second tangent, by the way. This is the new tangent that I got from this tangent, which what we were really doing is watching the video, this video. But this was really important because Alex O'Connor brought up something saying that some of our best scientific evidence suggests that the brain inhibits, focuses, organizes rather than creates consciousness. And I don't find that to be true, but that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Yo, Adam tuned in. What's good? Any philosophy today? Yeah, we're watching this guy and then or this video, and now we're looking through some tangents right now. This is a scientific tangent. This isn't that important, but so I was just wondering if neurons, part of neuron communication is electrical. So what gives with the magnetic fields that those currents create? So yes, there are magnetic fields, but their magnitudes are so minute that they have no measurable causal influence on neighboring neurons or tissues. Would they? Okay, why the fields don't meaningfully affect brain function? Okay. This is in contrast, the brain's electric fields do have local effects. Evolutionary perspective, why such weak effects matter or don't. Okay, so that's fine. That's good. Would these magnetic effects affect other currents that are current? No, I should. Oh, geez. Other proximal currents. These questions that I'm asking are not important, by the way. You're now asking about magnetic coupling between proximal currents in the brain, whether the magnetic field generated by one neuronal current could influence another nearby ionic current or circuit. All right, the key idea. Oh my gosh, we're getting into the actual math. To affect another current, a magnetic field must change over time and link with that neighboring current's circuit. So for any meaningful coupling, the source magnetic field must be strong. It must vary rapidly. Okay, so these neurons don't meet this condition. All right, we could stop with this. That line of theory is cooked. I'm curious about the substance we are made of. Also, do you often do philosophy days? I do philosophy most days. That's our normal mode of activity, I'll just say. And I'm usually on every day that I can be. We are. Oh, I should be pimping my. This is what we're working towards. This is what it's all about. We're working on this whole large document that's going to take a couple more years, probably. Determining a path for life. That's our ambitious goal. We. 3 parts here. Part 1, which is already done. I've already drafted it, and which answers your question about, I'm curious about the substance we are made of. That's all answered. That's all right here. So this is understanding the world and our freedom within it. Then the thing that I'm starting to work on now is develop a practical framework for identifying and reaching our goals. So regardless of what our goals are, we'll be able to identify and reach them. And then this is now, the goal is literally to have a path for life, or to have a life that feels meaningful, emotionally rewarding, and morally good. And so now we get to leverage what we've done in part 2 to specifically orient ourselves towards that ultimate aim. These questions though all pertain to part 1, which is why I'm somewhat equipped here to push back on Alex's quote right here. But yeah, let's continue here. Leading filter theories. The core idea of the brain as a filter manifests in several related theories. This theory suggests that to prevent us from being overwhelmed by a torrent of information from a universal consciousness, the brain filters and selects only the data essential for our survival and daily functioning. Where's the evidence of that? All right. The transmission theory, as articulated by James, this theory likens the brain to a radio receiver. It doesn't. So yeah, what would be the signal that the brain is receiving, and what in the brain suggests that it receives signal? That would be the answer against that. And then orchestrated objective reduction. We already went through this one. This is this more contemporary and controversial theory proposed by Penrose. Suggests that consciousness arises from quantum computations within microtubules, but the issue with this one was that our brain is too wet and warm. Maybe, I think that was it. Contention with Antonio Damasio's materialist interpretation. These filter theories stand in stark contrast to the more mainstream neurobiological perspective of consciousness championed by figures like Antonio Damasio. So yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, unless Gemini's wrong. Gemini's framing this as if this is a mainstream neurobiological perspective. I don't know why Alex O'Connor would say with such confidence that our leading theories are theories of filters and not one where consciousness is created by our biology, our neurobiology. Damasio's work is deeply rooted in a materialist framework, explaining consciousness, and I should say a physicalist framework, explaining consciousness as an emergent property of complex biological processes. His view can be summarized through the interconnected concepts of evolution and homeostasis. Damasio argues that consciousness evolved as a sophisticated tool for maintaining homeostasis, the regulation of an organism's internal state to ensure survival. Feelings, in his view, are the conscious experiences of these homeostatic states. So the fact that we can know consciously that something's wrong, that something's awry, whether that is our stomach hurts or that we see a cut or that we're seeing something in our environment that is unexpected or expected, this affects the rest of our process of our body's processes, both our neural processes, but also that interfaces with all the chemical processes that happen through our entire body, affecting both our not both, but our nervous system, our immune system. Like all these things are coordinating with each other to maintain homeostasis, like a form of regulation that allows us to survive and thrive. So it's actually it makes quite intuitive sense why consciousness would arise, that it gives us this significant advantage to maintain survival. Okay. What made you go into the C fiber stimulation? The question is not how the chemical elements interact. Rather, when a specific stimulation occurs, is there a necessary causal relation between it and some specific conscious state? All right. Let me just figure out what's going on here. The C fiber stimulation, is that the Penrose stuff? No, this is other stuff. This is straight up. We're talking nervous system and peripheral nervous system. I do need to actually study this our biology further C fibers include post ganglionic fibers in the autonomic nervous system. And okay, so when you ask what made you go into the C fiber stimulation, is this in the document, or is this did I say something like this? I'm a little lost. The question is not how the chemical elements interact. Rather, when a specific stimulation occurs, is there a necessary causal relationship between it and some specific conscious state? Right. So what I've mentioned specifically allows us to say that it's plausible that our conscious state arises from those underlying mechanisms. Now we're still met with this problem, this hard problem of consciousness. And we don't have anything to solve this problem yet, right? Like, our science does not actually make the link between the mechanisms in our brain and body and the actual experience that we feel, like the one that I feel like I feel. Yeah, okay. Zeos, I'll get to your thing right after this. It wasn't your subject rather than related about states, so you have the physical state and not have the conscious state, or the conscious state and have no related physical states. If that's true, then we got a problem. Right. There's still this hard problem. Like, this isn't there. The question is, given that we have this hard problem, what is the most plausible explanation for the connection? And given that we have so many correlates between what we see going on in the brain and the body and what we experience, and we also have this beautiful evolutionary interpretation or perspective that explains why consciousness would come about. Like, because we have all that stuff going in this direction, the argument is, we're still speculating, but it is much more plausible to consider that our consciousness is arising from these mechanisms rather than some external thing. Now, granted, if we did have some evidence that there was something that was like a receiver in our brain, and we're like acquiring signals that we can't make sense of externally. So, like, all the signals in our brain and body, we can make sense of where they came from, whether that's from stimuli or whether that's from literal chemical reactions, or if it's from neural communication. Like, we see exactly the flow of what our body's doing. So there's nowhere where, like, signal is coming from that we know of currently. Okay, I love an intriguing conversation, which is about to happen, possibly. If the brain is chemical control center and reality is a signal, then I think origin, where we originally came from, is a super construct. Ooh, okay, so I don't know quite what origin means specific, like, precisely here, like where we originally came from. Are we talking about? Yeah, in what like sense are we talking about where we originally came from? And then I don't quite understand super construct that as a concept, but yeah, in reality is a signal that okay, so you're saying where the signal of consciousness originally came from, and then I'm guessing super construct is some type of it's a concept that allows us to describe, like, an external origin of this type of thing. Yeah, I think we just don't have any evidence that there is some type of signal, of some external signal that's giving us the consciousness. And so, yeah, until someone can actually, like, point that out scientifically, then we're like, that I would say that is less plausible. Still speculating, that seems less plausible. Given the fact that our brain affects how we think about the ideas that we think about, such that when I think about an idea that leads to, so homeostasis describes this really well. Ideas that make my body think that I am safe and that things are good, that things are going well for the regulation of my systems, like, those are going to feel better. then when something jarring happens and it suggests that I might need to do something about whether it's the external world or my internal states, such that my body doesn't get out of this regulated range of what would be considered good, right? So the thought of, the thought of some external thing or some God, it might make me feel good, but I could describe that very feeling through homeostasis. That's why this is, like, evolution and homeostasis is such a effective way to look at this question. All right, the hard problem of consciousness. What is consciousness? I feel my own answer to the question is that the original universe did not have consciousness. The original problem the universe had was that it needed consciousness to expand with, so it produced the life forms, living things to produce it. The life took a while to develop, but started producing consciousness immediately. So I guess the one thing that I would point out with the framing that you have there is it almost sounds like there was a purpose, like a purpose to create consciousness from the get-go. And the one thing that we've got going on here that we got to point out right now, the evolutionary perspective here, that when we talk about how, our brain can arise from evolution. Importantly, evolution does not unfold with a specific purpose in mind. Some traits arise as adaptations, some are exaptations, some are just byproducts. Understanding the trajectory of evolution is a retrospective process. We determine whether a trait is an adaptation or just a byproduct only in hindsight by examining its origins, its survival role, and its structural dependencies. So the point being is we can't think that, or we have to. So consciousness is in a way the oxygen of the original universe. Yeah, it's just like the idea that there would be some purpose to creating consciousness in the get-go is difficult to pin down. Like it's somewhat unintelligible here. It seems more likely that things just transpired, and Earth was a crazy exception where life could begin. Now, I think even that, the abiogenesis, I really love this word. The original evolution of life or living organisms from inorganic or inanimate substances. I don't know, theories have it such that, like, in the bottom of in the ocean somewhere during a storm, there was enough energy to create a living organism, like a single-celled organism from nothing. I don't know. But anyway, homeostasis, this idea of homeostasis picks up right there. And now we can consider how the evolution of life has been this story of life trying to keep itself regulated such that it survives or thrives. And over time, as natural selection led to variations, and as many different organisms died off, the organisms that didn't die off marked the trajectory of evolution. And so after a long period of time, we finally get to something like a human where for whatever reason it is, whether it's because of the complexity of our social groups, or whether it was fire, there's a lot of theories for why consciousness would have emerged, but the retrospective interpretation of consciousness really fits well with this idea that it actually helps us maintain this homeostasis. Like it helps us signal other parts of our body to whether or not it allows us to signal the state of our body to the parts of our body that might be able to do something about it. Is abiogenesis possible? How do you propose that it happen? I suppose my view of things is rather odd, but it is what I remember or believe to be true. Yeah, I think we don't know. I think abiogenesis as a topic or as like a thing is, people think that it happened because, we know that there wasn't organic life, or there wasn't just life, when the Big Bang happened. So, unless there was, but yeah, what is the leading theory about abiogenesis? I don't think that this is like. Actually, I should ask more. Is this accepted as what happened, or is this still unproven, speculative, and competing with other theories? I think it's not set. I could be wrong about that, but I think we don't actually know. But the leading theory of abiogenesis, the process by which life arises from non-living matter, is the RNA world hypothesis. This theory is a predominant and widely researched concept, but it's crucial to understand that it remains a hypothesis and is not definitively proven. The origin of life is one of the most challenging questions in science, and all current ideas are, to some extent, speculative and compete with other theories. All right, so the RNA world hypothesis. The central idea of the RNA world hypothesis is that RNA, not DNA, was the primary genetic material for the earliest life forms. This is because RNA is a remarkably versatile molecule with the ability to both store genetic information, like DNA, and catalyze chemical reactions like proteins, which are called enzymes. Okay, that's cool. Key points of the RNA world hypothesis: dual functionality. In modern organisms, DNA store the genetic blueprints and proteins carry out the chemical work. RNA acts as a messenger between the two. The RNA world theory suggests that early in life's history, RNA performed both of these roles. Ribozymes. Scientists have discovered that some RNA molecules called ribozymes can act as enzymes. This discovery was a major piece of evidence supporting the hypothesis, as it shows that RNA could have facilitated its own replication and other essential chemical processes. So yeah, it would be something like you get a system where at such a low, small level, a very minute, zoomed in level, you can get so much matter, inorganic matter, operating in such a way that leads to a recurring system, like something where, it'll maintain itself. All right, so the stepping stone, the RNA world is seen as a transitional stage. Over time, more stable molecules like DNA would have taken over the role of information storage due to their greater durability. Similarly, proteins, being more efficient catalysts, would have become the primary workhorses of the cell. Yeah, as long as you have some self-sustaining system, then all kinds of stuff can come out of that. It's similar to the idea of evolution. It's like you've got just other matter involved that could get, squished together or moved in a certain way that leads to the creation of other types of mechanisms. And, this all just leads to other self-sustaining systems within. So I love Donald Hoffman. I think he speaks of very interesting possibilities. I feel he has a fascinating perspective. Donald Hoffman's theories. Is it related here, or should I just kind of ask what Donald Hoffman's theories are? Because we could do that as well. Is this accepted as what happens while the RNA world hypothesis is the most favored model of the origin of life among many scientists? It is not universally accepted as a proven fact. All right. Let's call it there. And then I do want to just see, okay. The somatic marker hypothesis, we're going back to Antonio Damasio's interpretation of consciousness here. This hypothesis posits that emotions and feelings are crucial for decision making. These somatic markers are bodily signals that guide our choices by providing a quick, intuitive assessment of potential outcomes. So this is like a smaller assertion that he makes. It's really that, given the fact that humans, like all the different parts of the human brain is like very much interlinked with each other, even the neocortex, which is how we make sense of how we ultimately gained consciousness here. It's quite linked to these other systems, both the earlier systems in our brain, but also into our broader nervous system and the other chemical systems in our body. So this just points out that even what we consider to be completely rational thinking, such as making decisions, is actually very much dictated by our literal gut feeling, like these chemical processes happening. Levels of consciousness. Damasio proposes a hierarchy of consciousness, starting with the proto-self, a non-conscious representation of the body's internal state, moving to core consciousness, the feeling of here and now, and culminating in extended consciousness, which includes a sense of self, past, and future, enabled by memory and language. The fundamental disagreement between the filter theories and Damasio's model lies in the origin of consciousness. For Damasio, consciousness is generated by the brain. It is a product of intricate neural mappings and the brain's continuous monitoring of the body. There is no external universal consciousness that the brain tunes into. Proponents of filter theories would argue that Damasio's model, while providing a detailed account of the neural correlates of consciousness, doesn't address the hard problem of consciousness. Why and how do physical processes give rise to subjective experience, qualia? They might contend that Damasio is explaining the how of the brain's processing of conscious states, but not the ultimate origin of consciousness itself. Conversely, from Damasio's perspective, the filter theories are seen as speculative and lacking empirical evidence. Neuroscientific research, including studies of brain damage and its effects on consciousness, strongly support the idea that consciousness is intimately tied to the physical functioning of the brain. For a materialist like Damasio, to propose a non-physical source of consciousness is to venture outside the realm of scientific inquiry. Right, so so would it be apt to say that Damasio's interpretation is the most plausible, albeit still speculative, and that these other interpretations are less plausible at best, given that there seems to be no or little empirical evidence of any of them. Our guts contain bacteria too. What co-related interaction does these bacteria play on our choices, if any? That Damasio talks about. Okay, let's get into that because that's really fun. If it's all right, I'm gonna literally just take your question. Would those? All right, let's let it rip. That is a great question, and I mean, this is like the mind-blowing thing about this view of homeostasis, because all of this stuff is interacting with each other, and it seemingly all is at play. Okay, that's an apt way to summarize the current scientific landscape regarding consciousness from a mainstream scientific and neurobiological perspective. Antonio Damasio's interpretation is considered far more plausible because it is grounded in observable empirical evidence. And to be clear, this is like observable evidence about the correlation between what's going on in the brain and the subjective things we feel. So it's not even like, it's not just like, oh, we're looking at science and it's just these things that are happening, and we don't know what they mean and why like because of the experiments where people lose certain parts of their brain and now they experience the world in a different way, or at least they say they are. And because of, when we know what's actually being activated, when we feel certain ways, that gives us a good amount of plausibility that our consciousness is arising from the brain, even if we don't actually know the exact connection. So the hypothesis would be, if we were to know significantly more about the brain, we would eventually be able to have a much better understanding of that connection. We would be able to fill in the gap, the hard gap of the hard problem of consciousness a little more. Okay. Yeah, the scientific method, the filter theories, problem, the lack of evidence, bottom line. Okay. It's fair to say that Damasio is providing a scientific hypothesis about consciousness, while the filter theories offer a metaphysical one. And I would say like merely a metaphysical one, because Damasio, I think, is offering a metaphysical one in some sense, but his is very much grounded. All right, that's an excellent and highly relevant question. This is the question about bacteria. You're connecting two frontiers of neuroscience. The gut microbiome's influence on our choices is a rapidly growing field of research, and it fits almost perfectly as another layer to Damasio's theories. The short answer is yes, there is a profound co-related interaction. The bacteria in our gut are not just passive inhabitants. They actively communicate with our brain along a complex network called the gut-brain axis. This communication can significantly influence our mood, stress levels, and consequently our choices. Think of it this way. If Damasio's theory posits that our choices are guided by gut feelings, somatic markers, the microbiome is a major factor that can change the nature of those feelings before they even reach the brain. Here are the key ways this interaction happens and how it affects our choices. The vagus nerve, the direct data cable. The vagus nerve is a massive cranial nerve that runs from the brainstem all the way down to the colon. It acts as a two-way superhighway, sending signals from the brain to the gut and crucially from the gut back to the brain. How it works: gut bacteria can produce compounds that directly stimulate the vagus nerve. The brain interprets these signals as information about the body's state of well-being or distress. Impact on choices: a gut environment that is sending calm or stable signals up to the vagus nerve can lead to a more measured, less anxious state of mind, promoting rational decision-making. Well, okay, so this I think would be inappropriate to say, even in Damasio's own language. I don't think you would say it's rational, because it's, in some sense, it's irrational, right? Like you're dealing with, like your literal, the chemical processes in your gut is affecting your decision making. That people think that rationality is something that like only your brain, like the neocortex is attuned to, but really, like these processes in our gut, they don't just affect they don't just affect like the contents of the decision, like they affect how we feel about these decisions. Like it affects other processes in the brain, like more closely related with the limbic system, that actually affect the emotions we feel. So conversely, a distressed gut can send alarm signals, pushing the brain towards a state of anxiety or fight or flight, leading to more impulsive or fear-based choices. The gut as a neurotransmitter factory. Amazingly, your gut is a major producer of the same chemicals that regulate your mood and are targeted by antidepressants. It's estimated that over 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut, and its production is heavily influenced by the types of bacteria present. Gut microbes also produce or influence other key neurotransmitters like GABA and dopamine. And it's, the thing that our document points out, which is important, is that when it comes to our actual feelings of happiness or the feeling of approach, which dopamine helps out with, or the feeling of reward, which dopamine helps out with, these molecules, these neurotransmitters, aren't actually acting as neurotransmitters in these cases. Like neurotransmitters are passed from neuron to neuron, but they're rather acting as modulators, which kind of diffuse across a population of connections, brain connections. So they actually affect whether or not a bunch of different neurons are firing in an area, which could have it's involved in the complex system of brain waves and these brain waves leading to the emotions that we actually experience. Impact on choices. If your microbiome isn't supporting healthy neurotransmitter production, your baseline mood can be lower, or you might experience more anxiety. This emotional state is the direct foundation of your for your choices. A brain with low serotonin might make choices that seek short-term comfort over long-term benefit. A brain with dysregulated dopamine might struggle with motivation or make choices based on seeking a reward signal it's missing. All right, then modulating inflammation and stress. What is the leading theory on abiogenesis, and why is it the leading theory? Zeus, you might have been gone, but we just did that one. The leading theory is the RNA world hypothesis, which is pretty much pointing out that RNA can do the task of both DNA and enzymes. Like it can do chemical reactions, like proteins, which are called enzymes, and it can store genetic information. So chances are there was just RNA that weren't involved in living systems, and then because of a lot of energy, it can, in theory, you would find that the movement of these in such a way led to the a feedback loop that leads to our first forms of life. So that's the theory. That's the leading theory. But it's not certain. That was the thing that came out of this. It's one of the most challenging questions in science, and while it's the most favored model for the origin of life among many scientists, it is not universally accepted as a proven fact. So yeah. All right, modulating inflammation and stress. So the gut microbiome plays a critical role in regulating the immune system and the body's stress response. Yeah, I think the main point is pretty clear though, that we can think about these different parts of our body as all operating in coordination to maintain this homeostasis in the body. Adam tuned in. Thank you, Stan. I learned something new today. Awesome. Interesting theory. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is so cool. It's kind of crazy that I don't see people talking about these types of theories. I mean, granted, I think the stuff that Damasio was talking about, like, this is the last 10 years. Like, this is contemporary science. So, hopefully we can help in the dissemination of this stuff. But it really makes the discussion on not only our consciousness, but also the meaning that we experience, like the actual the concepts that we understand. So, by the way, part 1 of this document, we literally go through and explain what leads to our experience of meaning, and then how we can think about what we understand, like how we can think about our understanding as something that, would be in our brain that is changing over time, that leads to our experience of, oh, I understand what a pen is. Obviously, when I see this, I understand what it is. So that's all the stuff that we kind of talk about. Then we can consider how we can think about the behavior of our understanding and what we might be able to do in order to change our understanding. And all that stuff is kind of, and then the final thing, obviously, part 1 does is it considers our freedom within the world that we understand. So we do all this stuff. This is all here. It's all pretty nice. And then we have shortened versions of this, by the way. There's a half, this for TLD version's half as long. Main takeaways, 4th as long. And I'm making videos on the YouTube channel where I just read through this. So if you don't want to actually read anything, you've got an audiobook. And I'm going to slowly just be working on this stuff. I'm going to try to make the content more fun. Going to try to make short-term content based on this. And then at the same time, we have to start working on, or I have to continue working on part 2, identifying and pursuing our goals. So that's going to take a long time, and it's going to deal with a lot of fun topics that are much more practical. I mean, I guess there's something really practical about understanding why we experience the things that we do and how we can think about the very concepts that we understand. But there's something more practical about, what sleep does to your ability to think through things and stuff like that, which we'll cover in part 2. But we got a lot going on here. And I think we're well grounded. This part 1 was so important because we needed to be well grounded in something that like we can actually commit to, and this science, like this discussion of the science of our understanding and our experience, mixed with a little bit of philosophy that allows us to consider how we can think about our understanding and stuff like that, really creates a nice foundation. I feel like the way the universe produced the first life is similar to this. It created a module, and that module kept splitting every part into smaller and smaller parts. Eventually, it had only a few parts left, so it fused the working parts into the very first life form. Naturally, it was mostly mechanical at first, lacking any awareness or consciousness. I think I agree with the second half of this, but the way that the universe started was like with the Big Bang. It started with the smallest stuff. Like what happened was actually that it started with the smallest stuff, and as the smallest stuff kept interacting with each other, it created a little bit larger stuff. This is like how we can make sense of the planets. Some of these planets are literally just things coming, like it's just things that became so massive that they kept collecting, more mass and more matter until they became these large, bodies of matter that we currently live on. But you could think that because these, these very small matter, whether we're talking subatomic particles or atoms, like because they too are massive in some, at some level, like they do have reactions with other matter, and they accumulate into larger things, and then with enough energy, perhaps you get a system where there's a feedback loop. And that seems to be the way, I think that's the way that things are. Yeah, the universe started actually quite small, right? Like, isn't the idea of the Big Bang that it started from like the smallest thing we could think of, and it just kind of came from there? Yeah. And we could also, this is a good opportunity to just pimp out, perhaps my favorite YouTube video of all, the history of the entire world I guessed.
Hi, you're on a rock, floating in space. Pretty cool, huh? Some of it's water.
We're not going to watch all this, but we'll watch the what we're talking about here. Wondering if human mating ritual, like a dinner date, was related to biological evolution, trait selection. One worry I've always had about naturalism is the metaphysical presupposition of reductionism. Naturalism. What actually? I'm sorry. What does that actually encompass? Can you briefly explain naturalism? Philosophic and literary movement that emphasizes the idea that everything arises from natural causes and laws without requiring supernatural explanations. I guess my question would be like, what type of reductionism are we thinking about? Because I'll try to address any reductionisms that we can come up with, or reductions. I do think, though, that human mating ritual, like a dinner date, was related to biological evolution. I do think that our traits of feeling empathy and feeling, wanting to impress, like I think these are explained through evolution. And it's obviously not a simple trajectory. It's actually quite complicated. The other thing that's really complicated, which, makes this conversation even crazier, is... Let's go all the way down to the evolutionary architecture of shared meaning. We can understand the coevolution of our biology and our culture through the lens of the Baldwin effect, which states that learned behaviors can influence the direction of evolution. So, obviously this would be at play for humans, but this would also be at play for earlier, like for our ancestors. So there's this idea that, you know, not only is the biology at play in terms of evolution, but also the behaviors that biology manifests. And so, yeah, it's quite like evolution is quite complicated. And once again, we can only like look back and try to retrospectively make sense of it. And it's not all just purposeful movements, or it's not all important movements. Like, it's not like all the changes that happened in evolution were related to survival. Like, some of these were just happenstance, and it just kind of led to things. But remember, this was a long period of time, and a lot of people, a lot of organisms died. It's a story of death. In general, if our terms refer to a thisness, reductionism would say it's nothing more than some particulars reduced to particulars, whatever these may be. Okay. Yeah, so I think in this document we do a good job of making sense of concepts such as this, which actually we do that, right? Don't I literally say that? This? Yeah. All right. Yeah, universe. The dynamic nature of concepts. Yeah, I mean, we could read this right now. I don't know. It might be just kind of crazy to just jump into this in a random section, but I guess rest assured, I think we could. There's ways to get out of certain reductions, such as, you know, reducing to particulars. The way that I see it, you know, particulars it's like something conceptual that we have, like this idea of particulars and universals. But the thing that I point out is that our understanding of particulars necessitates our understanding of universals, and vice versa. Like we couldn't even understand the concept of one of these without the other. So similarly, like, you know, you could think about our understanding as related in many of these different ways, where our understanding of the very category of what something is related to a bunch of different other categories. So my understanding of a pen, like my understanding that I'm holding this pen is, you know, one in which I understand a lot of things about a pen. I'm kind of understanding that the category of this object that I'm holding is a pen. So like there's a relationship between this particular thing that I'm holding and the category. So yeah, there's ways we could talk about how we understand things, but really at the end of the day, what's happening is that and we don't understand the full like architecture of this, but the best way we can make sense of this is that there's connections in our brain that are activated when we think certain things, and we can make sense of that through schema theory, which pretty much just says exactly what I said, where we can just abstractly consider that there's like some set of connections in the brain that are activated when we're thinking about certain concepts, and we can consider how these share, like, my understanding of a writing utensil and my understanding of a pen would involve activating similar brain connections. So we could think about relations in that way. The concept of this we can consider as, you know, just some activation, but it's kind of, you know, it's one that allows for context to, you know, give more information about what we're actually trying to talk about. It's not like there's some transcendent definition of what this is or what a particular is, or that the world is made up of particulars. These are just simply things that we've ingrained culturally. We've learned these things, and now it manifests in the connections that fire in our brains. Okay, somehow I feel like life still seeks true free will, which is something information has yet to achieve. We do not have true free will yet, just something that works kind of well enough. Yeah, so what this document proposes is that despite the fact that we don't have control over, you know, it's not like I have just the freedom to make things happen in the world. I can't just like kind of point at this pen and go, bam, now it's a bird. Despite the fact that I don't even get to control the thoughts that arise. Like if I really pay attention to the thoughts that arise in my head and the experiences that I have, I can't really control that. If someone comes through this door and I didn't expect him, no matter how much I try to stay, focused on what I'm trying to do, my brain's not going to let me focus on anything other than that person. So despite all these things, we do have these I have an understanding of the concept of freedom such that I understand that I can do things. I can hold this pen. I could write with this pen. Like, that's something afforded to me by, we could think about it from my learning, from my, my past experience, from what I'm doing right now, my mood. We could consider all these things, but, we could abstract that. We could just say it's just afforded by my understanding. It's my understanding of my own abilities. And so, yeah, we can leverage that understanding. I can leverage my very understanding of being able to consider what I can do now to change my understanding about what I can do in the future. There's a lot of practical stuff to go on with free will, but yeah, our any type of understanding of free will, I kind of point out that it has to involve constraints. It has to involve, like both pretty much conceptual constraints. Like we can understand what we can do in relation to what we can't do. Like there's this balance there. All right, I'll check it out. Understanding is under a set of possible laws of nature, a possible world of laws. So one of the things that I try to push here is that there's not like some transcendent group of laws about knowledge or understanding or anything. Like, really, at the end of the day, there's just experience. There's what people experience as true. Now, is it actually true? The experience makes them feel like it's true, but what we point out is that we experience things that we feel to be true all the time, and then we find out that they're wrong. So it's the experience of truth is really, it's just that, it's experience. And it's something that we can, we look into the brain and we could see how these things are emotional. Like, I can literally make sense of the certainty that I feel when I see, this is a pen. I know it's a pen. That we can make sense of through the very molecules that we just discussed. I think we don't have the truer form of free will yet, true free will. I think we have a form of free will, but it can easily become limited. Right. I don't think that like the idea of a true free will is one that I don't think we can acquire other than obviously our conceptual understanding of being free. And you might say, just because you understand yourself to be free doesn't mean that it's true. And yeah, this is one where our understanding of, or like the definition of truth here really, really fails us. Because as far as I'm concerned with doing things or getting things done. I'm concerned with knowing what's possible for me to do. Am I able to actually complete my goals? Can I make my life be a certain way? What I'm concerned about is my conceptual understanding of freedom. The particulars follow one set of laws if such particulars exist in a world. Yeah, so that's like the thing that I would push back on, just that they're, particulars are this is all a manifestation of our, understanding, which is, afforded by our culture. Like you and I have a very similar understanding where we can, we can say that this is a particular pen. But yeah, did my explanation make sense? What was the explanation? Was this something I just read through? All right, I'm rattling off a lot. We do want to watch this just for fun.
Fuck it. Actually, most of it's water. I can't even get from here to there without buying a boat. It's sad. I'm sad. I miss you. How did this happen? A long time ago, actually never, and also now, nothing is nowhere. When? Never. Makes sense, right? Like I said, it didn't happen. Nothing was never anywhere. That's why it's been everywhere. It's been so everywhere, you don't need a where. You don't even need a when. That's how every it gets.
So what he's saying now, this is all just like, this is all kind of like philosophical talk, like Alan Watts type talk about, what is actually pre-Big Bang and whatnot. Like, we really don't know. There's theories that, time is not like a thing and that everything kind of just happens and, You know, there's just ways you can interpret the world, but that's not the level of inquiry that we're looking at right now. But this is all the stuff that we were just talking about from now on. Except for this next little
Forget
part.
this. I want to be something, go somewhere, do something. I want things to change. I want to invent time and space. And I know it's possible because everything is here and it probably already happened. I just don't know when to start. And that's exactly where it started. Oh, I paused it.
All right, yeah. So this is the Big Bang right now.
I think there's a universe now. What's it made of? Quarks and stuff. Ah, that's a thing. In a place. Don't like it? Try a new place. At a different time. Try to stick together because the world is going to get bigger and emptier. But it's not empty yet. It's still very full and about 1 jillion degrees. Great news. The quarks are now happily married in groups of 3 called a proton or a neutron.
So this is the same type of mechanism that I feel would have led to life. It would be a similar mechanism where just inorganic matter get into these systems where they're now like, I mean, obviously these guys aren't like alive in some sense, but you would get one where there's enough energy to actually like jumpstart some living feedback loop.
Lying around too that wants to join in but can't because it's still too... Great news, the protons and neutrons are now happily married to each other. Some of them even doubled up. Great news, the electrons have now joined in. Congratulations, the world is now a bunch of gas in space. But it's getting closer together. And it's getting closer together.
The scale of years is crazy.
It's a star. New shit just got made. Some stars burn out and die. Bigger stars burn out and die with passion and make some brand new, way crazier shit. Space dust. Which allows newer, more interesting stars to be made and then die and explode into even crazier space dust. So now stars have cool stuff around them, like rocks, ice, and funny clouds, which can make some very interesting things. Like this ball of flaming rocks, for example.
There it
We
is.
just got hit with another ball of flaming rocks, and it kind of made a mess, which is now... Weather update, it's raining rock.
All right, we'll continue in a second. I can try to explain how free will is limited. So you have a pen, an apple, and a sandwich in front of you on a table. You have 3 options in your choice. Now a sandwich is often enough, a more solid choice than an apple. Now most free will logic will say an apple is a smaller, less relevant choice than a sandwich. Okay. More coming?
It's from outer space. Weather update, those rocks might have had water inside them and now there's hot steam in the sky. Weather update, cooler temperatures today and the floor is no longer lava. Weather update, it's raining. Severe flooding alert.
So, one of the things to point out is that it seems like water is like integral into this, in this whole abiogenesis process. And that's why when we're looking at other planets and stuff, we're like really stoked when we find out that, there might have been some water there. Because water is a precursor to life.
The entire world is now an ocean. Volcano alert. That's land. There's life in the ocean. What? Something's alive.
So he skips ahead.
Oh, cool. Like a plant or an animal? No, a microscopic speck. It lives at the bottom of the ocean and eats chemical soup, which is being served hot and
So he skipped the abiogenesis, probably because we don't know what actually happened, but...
fresh, made from gnarly space ingredients left over from when it was raining rocks or whatever. Oh yeah, and it can do that. It has secret instructions written
But yeah, this is
inside
where
itself telling it
now
how to
we're-
build another one of itself.
now we're at
So that's
DNA.
pretty nifty, I would say. Tired of living at the bottom of the ocean? Now you can eat sunlight. Using a revolutionary technique, you can convert sunlight into food. Side effect, now there's oxygen everywhere and the sky's blue. Then the Earth might have been a snowball for a while, maybe even a couple of times. It's a sponge, it's a plant, it's a worm and some other types of weird strange water bugs and strange fish. It's the Cambrian explosion.
And like the crazy thing is like I think Cambrian explosion, like we share parts of the brain with these things. I think that, or maybe it's not that. Maybe we just share parts of our body. I don't know. In the sense that like some of the things that we have in our body are very similar than the things that they have in their body, and we just had ancestors. Okay. Now, if a pen is going back to work, what does that mean? And you keep working with the pen. You get stuck between the pen and the sandwich until you're hungry enough to absolutely need the sandwich to keep working. Have you had a similar situation? So we're saying that. So you have a pen and an apple and a sandwich in front of you on a table. You have 3 options in your choice. Now a sandwich is often a more solid choice than an apple. Now most free will logic will say an apple is a smaller, less relevant choice than a sandwich. I guess I'm not quite following the logic here, but I guess pen essentially means work. Okay, so you could work, you could eat the apple, I'm guessing, or you could eat the sandwich and you're hungry and you're getting hungrier. Where does the free will come into play? I guess I don't follow the free will logic saying an apple is a smaller, less relevant choice. It depends what the aim is. Like, are you trying to satiate yourself as quickly as possible, or are you trying to, just get a snack? Like, it depends on what you're focused on. I will simplify it drastically now. Apologies. No, you're good. You're good. Thank you for posing the question.
Wow, that's animals and stuff. But we're still in the ocean. Hey, can we go on land? No. Why? The sun is a deadly laser. Oh, okay. Not anymore, there's a blanket. Now the animals can go on land. Come on, animals, let's go on land. Nope, can't walk yet.
This is just such a great video. All right, what are we at now? I said, okay, we talked about that, and then I don't think we have anything more. Are we actually getting back to the video now? How long has it been since we watched this video? And where did the video go? Oh, it's here, right? Yeah, it's there. Okay. We're back to there. Okay, what else do we have going on here? Nice. Have a good one. Need food. Oh, this is the same. This is the same. This is coincidental. You got to get a sandwich and an apple. Have a good one, Adam. Tune in. Thanks for coming. Thanks for chilling and talking about this stuff. I really enjoy it, and I hope you did as well. Yeah. All right. Let's get back to this video. How long have we been going? 2 hours. So maybe like another hour, and then I'll take another break. Or should we do maybe a break in like 30 minutes, and then I'll probably come back and just play Hades. We'll see. There's really not much I need to do today, I think. I mean, in theory, I should be doing more, but I think this conversation's actually been pretty nice, at least for getting me to think through this stuff.
It does not produce it.
Yeah, so I love your answer. So you were saying, depending on the person, you can do different things. You can read philosophy.
So I'd recommend them to do that, in other words, to look at that, depending on who they are.
Read the Gospels. So I think what's
Dr. K has always been dropping fire, so I'm excited for this. Scenario, you are hungry, there's an apple and a sandwich on the table, and you are holding a pen. Do you keep working on the writing documents with the pen, or do you eat an apple to ease the burden, perhaps even down the sandwich? Right, so this is where I think our discussion kind of helps out here, like where we can... So first of all, we can consider what's actually happening here, and this is where we point out that in a deterministic sense we really don't have this free will. Like what's happening is that our body is giving us certain signals. One is the motivation of trying to continue the work. One is that we're hungry, and as you keep going, your body's going to yell and yell and yell until you're literally compelled to go and eat the apple or eat the sandwich. And whether or not you eat the apple or the sandwich is going to be based on your context or your memory or whatever, maybe your temperament. We can make sense of this in so many different ways. For some reason, some people might go, let's just do the apple now and continue with the work, or eat the sandwich. It doesn't really matter. Now the question is though, in this whole homeostatic process where your body is trying to regulate its own well-being, and therefore it's pushing for the part of your brain that is actually seemingly making these decisions. It's telling it, hey, like, we really got to do this. We really got to do this. Go eat. You got to eat. You got to eat. What we feel is we feel hungry, and we feel like we got to still do this other thing. So really at a certain point, we're going to feel the experience of, oh, I should do that. Like, I should just go and eat right now. And so that feels like it's something that we do, right? It feels like it's a choice that we make. But just like in the earlier discussion we had about our gut literally affecting the decisions that we make, That's what's going on. It's like our body's literally helping dictate the decisions that we end up making. And so really, when we think about free will, I think the thing that I kind of push is like the most practical way to do this is at the level of experience, where we can experience and we can reflect on things that we understand. And, we are not privy to all these processes that are happening. We don't understand how they're happening or whether they're happening right now or what they're doing to us, how they're affecting us. But we do kind of have this idea that when we reflect in the moment, like this is where we might be able to take control. Now, granted, once again, we could think about this through a system where your body and brain is doing a lot of stuff that really you're not in control. But this feeling of control that we have when reflecting and taking a moment and being mindful about what we can do right now, that's like the impetus of some practical sense of free will. It's one where we're leveraging our conceptual understanding of freedom to actually affect what we end up doing. So like my thinking I should go and do this thing will actually affect the chances that I actually end up doing that, because it's sending signals to other parts of my brain and my body that prime it to go and do that thing. So ways of logic would say an apple is less relevant and therefore has only a 10% chance of happening. It is mostly stuck. Now, overall, I think 60% chance is you eat the sandwich right away. Lastly, 30% chance says you continue writing documents with the pen. I hope my thinking made sense to you. Yes. So when we start talking about percentages, now we're not at the realm of just one person. Like in theory, if we knew my entire body, we knew the state of my body right now and my mind and my brain, we would know exactly which one I would choose. Like we would be able to actually, you know what, with quantum science, we would have percentages. You know what? I'll just say that. But if we're ignoring quantum physics, chances are the percentages would actually not be significant. I think it would probably be like 100% chance you do this one thing. It would probably be 100% chance you eat the apple or something like that. But when we look at a population and now we see that 30% of the people did this, 80% of the people did that, and 10% of the people did that, now we're dealing with percentages because we're applying some like empirical evidence to a novel case. But once again, if we just had the novel case and we knew everything about the person, then we'd be able to know for certainty what they're going to do. But if we didn't know anything about the person and we just had the random sample and that data, then we'd be able to apply these percentages to the one person. Ways of logic would say, so yeah, I would say that we need to be more precise about like what it means when we're saying like the ways of logic, or logic would say this. Like logic would only say that if we're talking about applying empirical evidence to a singular person. And this empirical evidence needs to be well done. Like it needs to be a random sample. It's got to be a large enough sample size, or else these percentages won't actually help us predict. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we could think of freedom in all these different ways. Yeah, I think I'm just kind of talking in circles at this point, but I hope that was kind of clear or precise. Logic is information patterns. What do we mean by information patterns experienced, or information patterns like in the material world, such as like me seeing this is, well, yeah, this is the tricky part, because just consider me seeing these words on the screen. Like there are photons that are going into my eyes. You could think about these photons or this wave of light as an information pattern, but then once again, our brain and our brain is now taking that and it's translating it into energy, like more chemical signals and electrical signals that are quite different than the actual matter themselves. But then like that's even being mapped onto something else. Like the question is, what is the information? Is it the thing that I experience as information, or is it the actual information during one of these steps? Patterns of information, which is the basis where information comes from, right? So I guess I'm challenging us and you to not think about information as some objective truth, but as, you know, more precisely something we're experiencing or something that's in the material world, that we can think about in many different ways. You know, people do interpret the same, what you might call material information, in different ways. So the information that they experience is different. And you might ask someone, oh, what did you just see? And they'll give you different information as well. They'll say something differently. And so, you know, the question is, what is logic in this whole story? Yeah, that would be my line of thought there. All right, Dr. K, lay it on me.
What's interesting is that when Stephen gives the concrete example of like, if my friend comes to you who's had this religious awakening, or prior to religious awakening, what would you recommend to them? And I think what's really interesting is basically all of the answers that you said, I think, can map onto mechanism. And I'd just love to talk about that for a second. So the first thing is, you asked me at the beginning, am I religious?
Oh, thank goodness. He's gonna ground us.
I think here's my understanding of, and we were talking a little bit about, you know, people can have the subjective feeling of religion. What is the relationship to that thing being true? So here's what I've sort of observed. I don't know if y'all have ever been to like a really great cathedral.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know, if you go to a great cathedral, you don't have to be Christian to be awe-inspired by what you see.
Sure.
So when I look at the project of religion, which is a little bit different from spirituality, one of the things that I've observed is that religion is a series of structures to evoke a personal experience. So the whole point of reading the Gospels is, fingers crossed, and we'll get to how to optimize that. Fingers crossed, if you read the Gospels enough, or you go to church enough, or you pray enough, if you keep on talking to Christ, one day he'll start talking back. But I think the really interesting thing is, if you struggle with purpose, you can read the Gospels. If you go into religion, and I think what's changed now is that we have so much science to understand the mechanism through which religious practices evoke subjective experience. So I can go to church for my whole life, but until I have that relationship with God, that is a subjective experience that is evoked by the sort of structure of the religious practice. So that is absolutely one thing you can do. I think the cool thing is that the problem with reading the Gospels, as I can clearly see that you've done, and you know, I see the striving for religion in you. Like, you want to have that, right? Like, you want to know, like, what are these people actually kind of talking about? I could be wrong there, but I see this beautiful striving that you're trying really hard to figure this stuff out, which is just awesome to see. I think, though, that if we kind of look at it, and you mentioned kind of psychedelics as well, and I think psychedelics is really interesting because we know that, so if you take someone who has treatment-refractory depression or someone who has PTSD and you give them a psychedelic, the psychedelic is not healing. What is healing is specifically whether they have an ego-death experience. So if I see colors and things like that, that doesn't solve things. But the ego-death experience is what correlates with clinical improvement. So psychedelics are a good way to evoke a subjective experience, right? So we know that there are a couple of pieces. And when I worked with people, so one of the things that we know is that when you experience trauma, it shatters your meaning of life.
Yes.
And so working a lot with people with trauma, and this is something that I kind of laid out in terms of like making a guide about it. But what I realized is that there's a set of things that you can do relatively sequentially to get your meaning back. And so I think the cool thing about, like, you know, reading the Gospels or psychedelics or things like that is those each have some, fingers crossed, change in you. But the cool thing is, like, if you start with something called alexithymia, so as long as you are like using a bunch of substances, as long as you are not able to detect what is going on inside you, that is a fundamental prerequisite of the subjective experience of meaning. The second step to that is to go through some stuff around ego. So this is like the other like big thing that we try to focus on is like when your default mode network is hyperactive, this is the part of your brain that gives you a sense of who you are. Hyperactive default mode networks lead to depression. Hyperactive default mode networks also lead to some degree of like existential depression. And this is where so many of my patients get tripped up when they start reading philosophy.
All right, this is where we have to actually start taking notes. This is going to be crucial when we're talking about, where would this be? We gotta mention this maybe here. Oh no, this would be part 3. But we definitely have to write this down. All right, I feel like I have to ask you to define what information patterns in your are in your mind. Otherwise, I have to spend time defining it, which I don't really mind, but it does take time. So the way I go about these types of questions is, I think that there's not like a single definition of information patterns. I mean, unless we were to look up, like, unless we're talking about like what a dictionary says, that, or whatnot, or what ChatGPT says when you ask it what information patterns are. I think I always try to bring up this like semantic exercise of like when we talk about information patterns, or if we talk about freedom, or if we talk about God, or if we talk about existence, like different people are going to infer different meanings from that word. Like everyone's got a different context in their life, and they're gonna see something different or think something different when they think about that word. So what I try to do is I try to iterate through the ways that I think people would think about that type of word, and then consider, whatever we're dealing with, like how the conversation pertains to that one definition. So that's why I was trying to just do that. I was trying to say, like, we can think about information patterns as collections of material, of matter. We could think about it as what we actually experience. So, what I experience as information, right? Like this is in a pen, a pen itself, like the very concept of a pen, like this is an information pattern in theory. The fact that this pen is a particular or something, at least in my understanding, means it's like, it is an information pattern at the end of the day. Now I don't think of information patterns in relation to logic. In my mind, logic is more of like a rule set, like an ethic of how we can talk about, statements of truth, rather than, just something like facts. Like logic and facts, like logic can dictate how we talk about facts, but a fact isn't necessarily like logical, like by itself. Like it's not like I would say that the fact that this is a pen is logical. It's more logical that I say that this is a pen because of the properties that it has, in some sense. In my mind, the source of all information is our current source of all things. What is our current source of all things? What does that mean? When we're talking about the source of all things, are we talking about our experience, like our conscious experience, or are we talking about the state of the universe in its entirety right now? Like what I'm going to always do is I'm going to push you to be more precise about the definitions and about what we're talking about, because these phrases are rather ambiguous. Like different people are going to think different things when they hear the term or the phrase current source of all things. That's the whole tricky part about religion. Each of these religions have different creation myths. And, I would argue that these creation myths came about because people were trying to figure out the source of all things. And different people came up with different stories, and that's why there's different creation myths. All right, we're gonna write this down.
Hyperactive default mode network. Default mode network is hyperactive. Go through some stuff around ego. So this is like the other like big thing that we try to focus on is like when your default mode network is hyperactive, this is the part of your brain that gives you a sense of who you are. Hyperactive default mode networks lead to depression. Hyperactive default mode networks also lead to some degree of like existential depression. And this is where so many of my patients get tripped up when they start reading philosophy. This isn't against philosophy, but remember, this is happening in a subjective mind. If you're not careful, what we know is that philosophy can turn into intellectualizing. But there is a psychological defense where you start looking at theoretical stuff, and it sort of shapes the way that your mind functions, and it starts to become maladaptive.
What does that mean in simple terms?
So people, if you have a problem in life, you can think about it a lot. You can read about it a lot. There are a lot of people that I've worked with that just go on watching podcasts, like watching podcasts and reading books and things like that, right? But their life never changes.
Yes.
So this is where, so there's a certain amount of like,
I should just get the transcription of this video and ask for only the Dr. K stuff. Or maybe I could probably even just do that myself, right? I could write a regular expression to just get rid of all the whatever the other speakers are.
How to ground
and then we should just take that. We should throw it into Gemini and just have it like give us a full rundown of all this stuff. I mean, we probably could do that with a lot of Dr. K's videos. So let's chill out on that. But I will try to be as precise as possible. But it may take me a while to write up the answer. Well, if I don't want to give you a ton of extra work. Also, like I think I'm gonna probably end the stream for now in like 10 minutes. So that's the ultimate limit here. But yeah, it's really not that important if it's going to require you to do a lot of work. I don't mind a ton of extra work. That's awesome. It's a great way great spirit. It's more so that like, you know, you might be able to put this extra work into something more productive, you know. But that said, if it's something that you think would be very productive for you, then or for me, then let it rip.
In your experience, which involves reducing alexithymia, which involves dissolving your ego. And this is another really, really important thing that I think we find in people who have purpose. Because if we go back to the earlier example of the person who 30 days after they die, the world ends, that person, if they decide to still write the book, I think that there is a certain egoless involved in that, right? I'm doing it for the sake of the work. It's not for the benefit of humanity. It's not for some transcendent purpose. It's not for something that goes beyond my death. Actually, it's the opposite. I am doing this thing here and now just for its own sake. And so preparing for this podcast, I actually texted and called a couple of my former patients. These are people that I haven't seen in 35 years. And I just asked them, I was like, hey, bro, do you have purpose? Tell me what it is. And I was stunned by how their answers are not about what happens after they die. They're very like, I'm just here for the flow of it, right? My purpose in life is to experience what life has to offer. That's it. It's not about something beyond you. And I think this is where you're spot on, Alex, that a lot of people deal with the fear of death by wanting to live past it. But that is actually, that's the default mechanism that we use, but that is actually ego-driven, right? I want to exist beyond when I die. And so that gives people some sense of purpose. But I think the deepest sense of purpose actually comes without that. Comes from being able to make paper clips every day and being content with that exercise.
You're describing Sisyphus being happy, is what you're doing.
Yeah, so Sisyphus can be happy.
Yeah, I mean that's
Explain Sisyphus for those that don't know about the guy pushing the rock up the hill.
Camus, who is
They're touching on our picture here.
an existentialist, even though he doesn't call himself an existentialist. He founds this school known as absurdism, which is a word I used earlier too, and he tries to describe the absurdist condition of one in which you have all of these desires about the world, but the world literally just can't fulfill them. You're looking for meaning, it's not there. It literally, your desire and the real world are in conflict. And he calls this, the realization of this, absurdity. And he writes this short treatise called The Myth of Sisyphus, which is based on an actual ancient myth of Sisyphus, who is condemned by the gods as punishment to roll a boulder up a hill, and when it gets to the top, it rolls back down again, and he goes back down and he pushes the boulder up to the top of the hill, and he does that over and over again for eternity. The real torture of this is not so much the suffering of the pushing of the boulder, there's that, but the suffering in the knowledge that it's meaningless. And that describes the absurdist condition. And Albert Camus tries to respond to this by imagining Sisyphus being happy, and essentially as an act of rebellion against this condition, just getting on with it anyway and being okay with it. I've never been fulfilled by this. I've sort of always thought that this may, literally, and I understand that there are people who could do that, there are people who could write the book. And I thought of Sisyphus when you said the person who writes the book anyway, because it almost feels like an act of rebellion. Because it's not, you didn't just say they still write the book, you said they write the book anyway. They do it despite, they do it almost in protest of this condition. Some people can do that, but I think that is probably a sort of psychological cope.
No, it's not a cope, it's a mechanism.
Well,
Right,
I'm saying I think it's a cope. I think that it's not grounded in anything rational.
I don't know if it's grounded in anything rational. It's absolutely grounded in something empirical.
Sure, but like again, you can empirically like explain exactly why somebody's brain is doing what it's doing, but that doesn't mean that there's any rationality or truth in the thing that their brain believes.
Sure. Right.
So
But I think this goes back to the issue of whether there's capital P. But I think that you can observe the world and you can make observations, and you can, I don't know what your relation to scientific observations and truth is, whether those things are connected or not. But I think that we know actually there are multiple psychological mechanisms, some of which are copes and some of which are not copes.
I suppose I mean like a philosophical cope. I mean like it's not. I think it's untrue. I think that the person who is content in such a condition is almost by definition delusory.
What does delusory mean?
Like under the influence of a delusion. I think that it is not a happiness-inducing condition to be Sisyphus rolling his boulder up the mountain.
Yeah. So this is where I think the data is actually against that. So what the data shows is that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I should try the invite. Oh, it's oh my gosh. No one's been able to join the Discord. All right, I'll rectify that right now. And hopefully, wait a second. I could have sworn that. All right, let's go right to the source. So I could have sworn that this would have just been open, but it probably isn't. Security actions. Oh no. What do we need? We need. What do we need? We need a settings, right? Channel server settings. No, it was probably just invite, right? Invite to channel. Is the channel not just open though? Like, is this? But we just need an invite link. Am I doing something crazy right now? Server settings. App integration. Access. Invite only. Discoverable. Oh, it does not meet the requirements. Which is why we need to do invite only, I think. Not age restricted. But how do invites? Create an invite link? How about, oh, use edit invite link. We want no limit, right? Expires never. Generate a link. Copy? Do we create it? Is this the one that we just created? Oh no, this one expires never. So what is this code? All right, let's get rid of this one. Let's create a new invite link. Never, no limit, generate. And then what is this? Copy. Why are there two though? What's going on here? Like okay, so does this link work in chat right now? And where's the other one was Linktree? Maybe I can modify this right now. Oh, I need to actually be able to work on this. How do I log in? Oh, this is looking promising. But nothing's loading. There we go. New design, but the UI is broken, maybe? There we go. Join our Discord server. We have to be able to edit this, right? Not just that. Okay, there we go. That avoid broken links by removing your invite expiry. I think we've done that. How do we save? Is it auto-saved? Maybe. And then where else do we have that information? Ooh. I don't know. Did that work though, out of curiosity? I think in theory it should show up here, but I'm not sure. And these announcements should keep coming. We've got the stream chat coming in here. Oh, nice. Oh, I'm reading the rules. Okay, so in theory, it should have said something in the introductions, but maybe it didn't. Yeah, I'm curious if it's functioning properly, because I think I changed something in here that maybe is making it harder. But it should do an introduction at some point. Yeah, just let me know if it gives you the right like permissions and whatnot. But yeah, thanks for showing the interest, and thanks for letting me know that was broken.
Illusory mean?
Is content in such a condition is almost by definition delusory.
What does delusory mean?
Like under the influence of a delusion. I think that it is not a happiness-inducing condition to be Sisyphus rolling his boulder up the mountain.
Yeah, so this is where I think the data is actually against that. So what the data shows is that it is your attitude towards the circumstances of your life that determines your happiness or your lack of happiness.
Well, someone can be in a happy delusion. In fact, that's why most people suffer from delusions, because it makes them happy.
That's not why most people suffer from delusions.
So, but you understand what I'm saying? That like
yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think that it's
you can't
it's
empirically show that something's not a delusion because it makes people happy.
Yeah. So
So
you can
this is where I think Alex is like he's assuming there to be some truth that is actually separate from the person's understanding of the situation. So if if someone is in that situation and they feel oh, it's worked, nice. So yeah, did it let you get? Okay, so you are a member, but it just didn't announce you, which is what I was hoping for, which is a bummer. But does it? Yeah, does it? I guess it would allow you to see everything in the server now. And it's a ghost town. We are a small channel right now. We're building up though, making some progress, I think. Slowly but surely. And I'm just pumping out more content. I'm going to try to start reaching out to other content creators maybe like next month, and hopefully that quickens the process. But I feel like we talk about some cool stuff here, so I think it should be it shouldn't take too long.
absolutely differentiate between a psychological cope and an attitude towards life that is not a cope. And the
All right,
reason
we got to watch
it's
it
not-
again.
In fact, that's why most people suffer from delusions, because it makes them happy.
it's that. So what the data shows is that it is your attitude towards the circumstances of your life that determines your happiness or your lack of happiness.
Someone can be in a happy delusion. In fact, that's why most people suffer from delusions, because it makes them happy.
Oh, we
That's
should,
happiness or your
we should actually write this down as well. This is a really great quote.
It is your
It is your attitude
towards the circumstances of your life that determines your happiness or your lack of happiness.
Someone can be in a happy delusion. In fact, that's why most people suffer from delusions, because it makes them happy.
That's not why most people suffer from delusions.
Oh, sorry.
Delusion, I think.
So this is where I think the data is actually against that. So what the data shows is that it is your attitude towards the circumstances of your life that determines your happiness or your lack of happiness.
Someone can be in a happy delusion. In fact, that's why most people suffer from delusions, because it makes them happy.
That's not why most people suffer from delusions.
So, but you understand what I'm saying? That like
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
but
I just think that
you
it's
can't
it's not.
empirically show that something is not a delusion because it makes people happy.
Yeah, so you can absolutely differentiate between a psychological cope and an attitude towards life that is not a cope. And the reason you can differentiate that is because of what is underneath. And people can be delusional, but they're not necessarily delusional to make themselves happy. In fact, quite the opposite. So we have diagnoses like schizophrenia, of which one of them is having delusions. And those delusions, generally speaking, the more schizophrenic and the stronger your delusions are, the more that inversely correlates with your happiness.
To be clear, I'm talking about like a philosophical delusion.
The question I want to get an answer to is this idea of the person who writes the book or pushes the boulder up the hill, and can that person have a purposeful life?
Absolutely. So this
I
is
don't understand why they're cutting Dr. K off. He's spitting fire, and then people are stopping him.
this is what's so confusing for people, is that people think. So what Alex is saying, I think, is a really, really common representation of what people think about purpose. My purpose is to make something that is greater than me. My purpose is to have some meaning or impact in the world around me. What we know is there's a great example of this called self-determination theory, which is that if you ask people, if you look at people who have purpose, what you find is it's not about anything transcendent.
Have purpose or have a sense of purpose?
Have a sense of purpose. Okay, we're asking them subjectively,
Yeah.
right? So if we're like and that's what I think. And these people are less likely to be addicted to things, are more resilient, tend to be subjectively happier as well. So we're talking about subjective, right? What you find is that they have three things. The first is that they have some degree of self-direction. So this is like, I choose to do something. They're not just taking it from life, they are making choices. And this is where people...
Okay. People that report having purpose have three things in life. The first one was a sense of self-direction, what we have considered as a sense of freedom. So we've actually covered this in part one.
also get confused because they think like, which choice is right? That kind of thinking is actually irrelevant. There isn't a right choice or a wrong choice. What correlates with your sense of direction is whether you make it or not.
Ooh,
so you actually
nice.
need to get away from the concept of right and wrong. The second thing is that they need a stretching of their competence. So if you just take a bunch of people who are not being pushed and finding themselves grow, then their sense of direction or purpose will decrease. And the third thing is a sense of relatedness. So there's something where I have
So
to...
the sense of challenge, the sense of that pushing is something that we're actually going to cover at the end of part 2, but we're going to actually, so this is going to be covered in part 1. This is going to be covered in part 2.
know who I am
Yo, thanks for following. Thank you for joining the community. Hopefully it's a fun community. Oh, nice. I'm gonna give that all of these. The laughing wouldn't make sense, but yeah. Now feel free to stop by or start a discussion anywhere. I'll try to be good about. I got to like look at the Discord, make sure that I see when people are starting to say stuff, and so we have a subreddit. It is already a fun community. Nice. Yeah, and we've got some nice some regulars who are really kind and wholesome. So that's the goal. The goal is to keep the community non-toxic and very positive and collaborative and whatnot. So yeah, it should be a fun development where we're only starting up. But yeah, I'll keep at it. I'll make sure I keep doing work towards making sure this thing gets going.
And have a sense of relatedness.
A sense of relatedness is
then
the last.
Their sense of direction or purpose will decrease. And the third thing is a sense of relatedness. So there's something where I have to know who I am and have other people see that part of me. And if you cultivate these three variables, then your purpose will empirically, and by empirical, what I mean is that we can literally measure people's subjective experience in an objective way.
And then we can predict.
And so like these kinds of things I think can end up improving your purpose.
What are you measuring when you're looking for?
Alex, I would love to get your answer to this idea. Do you think the person who is pushing the boulder up the hill or is writing the book, even though the world's about to end, can still
Steven's so set on this one thing. Dr. K is literally answering the question of this entire conversation right now by telling you exactly what you need in your life in order to feel meaning. And, that would imply that if we want to affect the entire population and give everyone a sense of this, then perhaps it would be for each person to follow these types of steps. And perhaps we can, make those steps more clear or, kind of really talk about what you can do for each of those different steps, those 3 steps. But yes, Stephen's set on this Sisyphus question. So yeah, the idea would be you'd apply those 3 things for Sisyphus. So Sisyphus might not feel like, I guess it would be difficult first for Sisyphus to feel the sense of self-direction, right? He's doing something that he's forced to do. So what would he be able to do that gives him self-direction? And maybe it's what he thinks about or what he sings while he goes up the mountain. So, each of us have things in our life that are constraints. We're like born with the certain bodies that we have. We're born into the certain cultures that we're in. Like these are things that were forced upon us. This is our Sisyphus boulder. We're built in, we have a biology that actually makes it so that we feel pain and stuff like that. That's a bummer, Embrace primalism. What's good? Have you explored the new Renaissance? You asked this last time. I'm actually not quite sure. Is the new Renaissance something specific that I should check out? Because I will check it out. But I don't quite remember what it's referring to. But yeah, what I'm saying is, in relation or in spite of these constraints that we each have in our lives, like we can consider, we can imagine which areas of our life we do actually have freedom in. So despite the fact that I have this, this brain and this body and this, I'm here, like, what can I do, with my freedom? It pertains to that one bald guy and to this video. Oh. Right. I probably have that saved in the watch later, but I don't recall. You might have to point it out to me, unless you want to just throw it up again. I'm sorry about that, but it's somewhere in the watch later, I think. I forget. Was it the Ammon? Okay, it's Ammon. Is this what you're referring to in terms of the new Renaissance? Yeah, unfortunately, I know I keep saying this, but unfortunately, it's not I don't know if the content of this stuff is going to be really relevant for the document that. Like I'm trying to make a lot of progress happen with this document and with the channel really fast, and it's requiring me to literally I've been reading neuroscience at night, and this really pertains to part 3 of the document. It's just it's hard for me to justify watching a 2-hour video of something that's not going to really help us out too much, unfortunately. Renaissance as in rebirth of the classical context. Yeah, I'm sure I would find it interesting. It's just there's so much stuff I got to do. And granted, I do find the time to play a little Hades in the day, but I do usually work the rest of it. Okay, here we go. I think there are at least 4 layers of informational logic: base layer, deep layer, deepness layer, world layer. I believe I put them in an appropriate order as well. Yes, so my question would be what is the evidence that framing of informational logic is true in some absolute transcendent sense? What is the proof that is the right interpretation of informational logic? As I mentioned, that each person, when they think about that phrase, informational logic, they're going to think of different things. So what is actually making it such that the one that you think is the case, the one that has these 4 different layers, is right? Because, I would say a 4 different layer informational logic is somewhat arbitrary. Why not a 3 different layer informational logic? Why do there have to be layers at all? So I think it's been the case that philosophers will create some rigid rule set of their philosophy, or this rigid interpretation where it's we've got this many things and this is how the things are working and whatnot. When that's fine, perhaps a 4-layer interpretation of informational logic is beneficial for some reason. It actually shows us something interesting, but to purport it as the thing, that this is informational logic, or that this is some transcendent truth about the world, would be stepping over the bounds. It will restructure the fabric of Renaissance it will restructure the fabric of reality. Everything we know is part of the matrix. Yeah, but is that practical though? I could describe this document as how people can live a more fulfilling life within the matrix. How you can experience positive emotions in the matrix, how you can identify and pursue your goals within the matrix, how you can get a sense of freedom within the matrix. Just, even though everything gets blown up by the, once you get past the matrix, that's not where we're all going to be living. Chances are the vast majority of human beings will not come to understand what that video has to offer about the matrix and what it means that we're a part of it. And therefore, it's really impractical to know that stuff. Unless, of course, it helps us figure out what we can do to feel, more meaning in the world and whatnot. And, chances are there are things that do show that, right? We've pointed, even in this discussion, they've talked about how psychedelics can give people ego death, which then allows them to feel more positive emotion or more purpose in their life. But yeah, then I would argue let's just go into that area, not into the overarching area. I wish I had time to answer all of your questions, but unfortunately, I realized I would have forget the questions before I am able to answer them. I really should start making my own videos. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. And it would probably get you thinking. It would be a great exercise in thought, and also writing. If you write, what are those things called? Transcription? No. A movie's script. Yeah. I literally added in the name. What if I told you the world has been lost to the barbarians, the ones who speak barbar languages? The Greek is the key to cracking the matrix. I used to see a utility in the degraded philosopher king of what we call religion. I had not seen Wonderland yet, nor did I know Morpheus, aka Ammon. I mean, I would say that once again, like, that knowledge doesn't help me out. Like, I don't know why I should leave the Matrix. I actually feel quite good in the Matrix. The Matrix is pretty nice for me. Some people don't like the Matrix, right? Like, some people are you know, don't, like, they could be depressed or experiencing anxiety. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow them to experience positive emotions. But, you know, so what if it's in the Matrix? That's what I'm trying to say. Like, no amount of what is actually the truth in some objective sense that, you know, Ammon points out makes me feel like I want to leave the Matrix, or makes me need to, you know, tell this to other people. I don't know why I would need to spread this information if it doesn't actually affect their well-being. So that would be my challenge here first. All right.
Genuinely live a subjectively.
All right, I was totally wrong about how long I was going to stay online. It's already 6. Yikes. All right, I got to eat something before I get back on later. Yeah, let's hopefully there's like a good end to this little string of, yeah, I'll probably do it here. Is agnosticism the truth?
And by subjective, I mean in their opinion, purposeful life.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think Sisyphus can be happy, but I think that's not the attitude that I would have. And I don't, for myself, find it satisfying. Any analogy which is sufficiently similar to the Sisyphus condition that is, and the attempted solution is, well, just imagine Sisyphus happy. That's how he literally ends the myth of Sisyphus. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, and I can imagine him and say, you know, good for him.
Do you think you would be happier if you believed in Greg's views of the world?
Almost certainly, but not because of Greg's views, but because of the confidence and satisfaction that they bring. I think I'd feel just as much meaning in my life if I was a convicted Muslim, or were I?
Yeah, I think
a Jain
Alex
or
is just
something like that.
he's looking for an
The
objective
content
truth.
of the theology has
All right, we gotta chill.
no bearing in your mind on the way a person experiences their life.
So,
of course it does.
Can you
Of course
explain
it
that
does.
just in simple
Specifically,
terms? Content of the theology.
Well, the content. Well, you talk about different.
All right, I think this is gonna lead into another thing. Man, this conversation has been it's been a little annoying that every single time Dr. K drops these gems of wisdom, that the whole conversation has been driven in a different direction. Okay, slaves definitely allowed. What's going on here? All right, here we go. There is no way you will like the lies once you can see them. The monists so I would say, why would I want to see the lies if I'm not going to like them once I see them? The monists stole reality and made you a slave in a fairy tale. The lot of us, the Greek, is the key. That Jesus was was passed down from the giants. The world does not have access to the sources because we are illiterate. We don't speak Greek. And the so-called translators are lost down 2,000 years decontextualization. Yeah, I mean, the two things I would say is, because I am going to hop off here. The first thing is the line of inquiry that we followed in part 1, where I really tried to ground the development of culture over time in the empirical basis of each person's own physiology and their own brain and their own understanding, and how this, in coordination with other humans, would result in different ideas and whatnot. So I guess from all that implies that the Greeks didn't have things right, just in the same way that we don't have things right. Like none of these different cultures are perfectly right about things. That wouldn't be an appropriate way to talk about it. The second thing I was going to say is in the same line of reasoning that I was bringing up previously, which is a little bit more of a, kind of humoring and entertaining rather than it's not like the strongest point. I think that first one was the strongest point. But once again, this type of thinking is not going to be compelling for people. People are probably going to find it as, off-putting or something. And so the question is, why do we need to even entertain these things? Like, why not just point out how people can be more happy in their lives? Like, certainly, I do agree with you that there's probably a sequence of things I can experience or learn that will make me feel upset about something, whether that is, what billionaires are doing, what companies are doing, what religions are doing, there's certainly a way I can think about all these things that could get me upset, but I really don't want to get upset. Unless, of course, I think it is actually morally necessary that I do get upset about certain things, which is why, I am a little upset about certain things, but I'm not upset about like someone, affecting our culture in like a significant way, but maybe I should be. That's kind of a Marx idea. Culture. You must get to know the cults. Once you see the reality, you will see when people speak on things they do not know, classical context and ideas too complex to fit into our degraded understanding in our barbarian language. Okay, what's going on here? Yeah, I don't know. I would just argue right off the bat that this isn't a compelling advertisement. Like, I guess if I could give any advice, you're advertising in a way of like, come check this out, in a way where it's like, hey, come check this out. You're going to be scared and upset. So like, this isn't a good sale, it's not a good sell. Cause I don't, I guess what you have to do is you have to somehow connect the blasphemy that you see going on to my own hardships. But the problem is, for me, I've managed to get myself in a point where I don't have significant hardships right now. And that's mainly because I'm following these things that Dr. K is talking about. So yeah, I guess you're also selling someone who's already got, the sense of purpose that I guess you're trying to affect. I don't know. This is not a religion in which we need followers. This is the new Renaissance. We need scholars, polymaths. Yeah, but you need them to come in voluntarily, right? Like, you need them to want to join in. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. Like, on one hand, I do respect the interest and I do respect the enthusiasm, but I'm a little concerned about the fervor and the zealousness. Oh yeah, Onion Helmet, we're popping off today. And the VIP. Oh yeah, we literally just earned that. We got I think it was 50 followers. But yeah, this is my second stream of the day. I started with a Hades stream, and this stream's been going on for 3 hours. Unfortunately, Onion Helmet, I'm going to stop, but I think I'm going to stream a third time. Probably playing Hades again. But this time I'm trying to get through this video, but once again, Dr. K keeps giving absolute fire. He's popping off. He's banger after banger. He's telling everyone here. He's telling everyone exactly how to. He's doing part 3 of our document right now. He's literally telling everyone how they can experience a meaningful and emotionally rewarding life. Like, he's literally giving the steps to do it, which is why we're writing notes down. And these two guys are just interested in talking about like the semantics of religion, or not the semantics of religion, but like the, you know, what is ultimately true, you know, in some objective sense. So that's been a really tough thing. And honestly, it's a good case study that shows why. I wish it wasn't versus spiritual thinker. It should be atheist versus Christian versus scientist or something like that. Some like science, someone who actually knows science. Because yeah, or psychiatrist. It literally should just be psychiatrist. Because Dr. K is giving very tangible, practical advice, and you could tell that these other guys aren't equipped with the advice, nor are they even interested in looking into a discussion about the advice. So I don't know. I'm getting worked up, but we got to finish it. We got to just keep going. Maybe tomorrow I'll do that. Dr. K actually does reference things such as Dharma during his talks. Yeah, I do recall that. Oh, was my prediction about Greg and Alex correct? Kind of. So they actually haven't been going in too far on that stuff, but like Alex did actually. All I'll say is I haven't been impressed by this guy at all. I wish this guy was not there. Alex is really set on this idea of some like objective purpose, and he's looking for that, or at least he's not happy with the fact that there isn't one. Like the fact that we have like, you know, going to the gym and exercising is likely to make you happier in life. But that doesn't mean that that's some truth about your purpose. Like, you don't have to do it, but you can do it. So the analogy would be like Dr. K would say, hey, you can gain the benefits of going to the gym, or at least you could try to gain the benefits of going to the gym, and you might feel happier in your life. And Alex would point out, but that doesn't mean that going to the gym is like some ultimate truth of happiness. And it's like, who cares? This is like what we're looking for is a practical way for people, this entire generation, to find ways and to feel better about their life. Okay. It's merely we misread the Greeks, the fairy tales, the myth, and the false reality, all misreading its ancient language translation, philology. Christ your eyes so they may see. Does Dr. K read Greek? I doubt it. I doubt he reads Greek, to be honest. I should say, embrace primalism. You should check out Hades, the game. It's pretty cool. You get to talk with all those Greek gods and stuff. All right, I think I'm gonna go eat something, and then I'll be back in like I don't know, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and we'll play some Hades. Chill for the rest of the day. This morning, Onion Helmet, I filmed the read through of Experience in the Moment, and I'll probably be editing that tomorrow and hopefully get it up by Monday. We'll see. Yeah, bye for now. Thank you for hopping in, and I hope you enjoyed. See you guys later. Have a good rest of the day.